Let's call this committee meeting to order. Greeting fellow commissioners, seeing Commissioner Alexander and President Lopez with us. We don't need to do a roll call vote, do we?
No.
Okay.
Who's there?
Thank you so much. And so for our agenda today, we're actually going to go in a slightly different order than what was shown in the agenda. We're going to be doing the informational item C first, which is the update on the Latinx student resolution. And so I'm going to pass it over to staff to lead us through this informational item presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Bogus. I'm Nicole Priestley. I'm the Chief Academic Officer, and I'm excited to present members of the Curriculum Instruction team today to give an update on the Latinx resolution. We have with us a director from PGD, Professional Growth and Development, Devin Krugman, members of our multilingual team, Amy Gottesfeld and Miguel DeLoza, as well as Danielle Utley, and the executive director from our College and Career Readiness team, Dr. Jennifer Fung. So I am going to turn it over to Devin to open up the meeting, and I'm going to say Devin and baby. So I'm glad to always have small people join our presentation. And Deborah, if you can give us the slide deck, we'll get started. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Devin Krugman. As Dr. Priestley shared, I'm the Director of Professional Growth and Development in Curriculum and Instruction. This is Noah with me. She is very passionate about equity in education, so she's joining this evening. So if we can go ahead and go to the next slide. The purpose of this evening is for us in Curriculum and Instruction to give an update on some of the progress made towards the curriculum and instruction specific items in the Latinx resolution. You're going to predominantly hear from our College and Career Readiness team, along with our Multilingual Pathways team, to speak to some of the action taken with specific resolution sub-items. Across all of the programs and action that you're going to hear about, they are in service of these two main goals, one being prioritizing Latinx student achievement, and the second being eliminating the gap between Latinx students and all students in the district across these multiple measures. Next slide, please. So throughout the presentation, we've taken each of the specific deliverables related to C&I in the resolution and listed them explicitly and then named the actions taken by our teams. So the first item that we wanted to spend a little time talking about has to do with this idea of utilizing a data dashboard of measures for PK to 12 achievement of Latinx students. The first set of program items that we wanted to speak to was the degree to which our data dashboard, and particularly the multiple measures that we use across things like SBAC and the reading inventory and the math milestones, are able to identify the intervention needs of students. And through that identification, provide targeted tier 2 and tier 3 supports. So as you can see listed out, these are some of the examples of the ways in which these measures identify off-track students and provide targeted interventions to those students, and these being specific to the areas of literacy and math. I'm now going to go ahead and hand it over to our college and career team, who's going to speak to how this identification then translates into identifying the needs of students at the high school level related to being on or off track in relationship to things like graduation requirements.
Thank you, Devin. Next slide, please. So I'm Jen Fong. I'm the Executive Director of College and Career Readiness. This graph shows the on-track rate to graduation for the past 4 years. In that third set, you can see there were slight increases for Latinx high school students. The next slide. So the Latinx resolution coincided with major grant writing and outside funding by the College and Career Readiness Department, allowing us to create new direct services for Latinx students. As a result, 2 years ago, CCR felt a minimal impact caused by a 50% reduction in unrestricted funding And so even though the $500,000 we have in unrestricted only pays for a 0.4 FTE, our CCR programs enroll more than half of all high school students. And that includes AVID, AVID Excel for English learners, Career Technical Education or CTE, dual enrollment, internships, and high school credit recovery. In the next slides, you will see how critical CCR programs are for Latinx students. For example, of all the math courses taken by Latinx students, 8% of those credits are earned through high school credit recovery versus 3% for the district. However, services for Latinx students will be significantly reduced as one of our 3 P funded programs is proposed for elimination and 2 will be reduced by 30 to 40%. Meanwhile, several of our grants will expire. So what you see here is Latinx students who actually participate in a CCR program consistently enroll in college at higher rates than their peers. So rather than our current label as indirect services, we could actually be called a CCR school, as we have created a robust 3rd semester of programming that allows Latinx students 50% more opportunities to meet graduation requirements and prepare for post-secondary. An example is that CCR granted 44,000 credits to high school students last year, which would probably be more than the smallest 4 or 5 high schools combined. In the case of a program like AVID, you can see the last bullet, 519 Latinx students participated. And in the graph above, you can see that AVID graduates in the class of 2020 were actually enrolled in college at a rate of 11 percentage points more than their peers. Unfortunately, right now, AVID is proposed for elimination. Next slide. In terms of post-secondary success, a combination of efforts lead to matriculation. Much of this work is done by the Student Family Support Division's Counseling and Post-Secondary Success Department. And my department, CCR, focuses on additional programming such as dual enrollment, which appears to be effective at increasing college matriculation. So last year, we had 293 Latinx students who took their first college class while still enrolled in high school. Next slide. CCR also develops robust programming for Latinx students. An example is that we really value our bilingual students, and they are needed for internships, working in early education and out of school time, where many of the young children are Spanish speaking. So we hire many staff members to support the Latinx students with this programming. And altogether, CCR represents more than 1/4 of the entire staff of the Division of Curriculum and Instruction, thanks to the grants that we have written. So on this slide, you can see that 345 Latinx students participated in a career internship, but again, this program will also be eliminated as proposed. Our other main program is, our marquee program is called SAIL, Summer Academy for Integrated Language Learning, and that's a partnership with the Multilingual Pathways Department. Right now, that is primarily funded by a federal grant. And this is really important for hundreds of Latinx students in the summer, where they receive critical credits for graduation annually. And so with the proposed reductions to high school credit recovery, and with this program being on a grant that's expiring, it's probable that the graduation rate will decline for English learners, as well as overall for the district, because the large number of students in this program. At this point, the next slide, I pass to one of my colleagues in CNI. I think it might be MPD. Amy.
Thank you. No, thank you, Jen. That's me, Miguel de Loza. Hi, everyone.
Thanks,
Miguel. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. My name is Miguel de Loza, and I'm the supervisor for MPD. And we're going to talk about the new programs, so academic courses that we're providing to Latinx students. And we're glad to inform that we started in January 2021, a newcomer alternative high school for those students that are 16 and older, and they're working full or part-time, and they are graduating on a Plan 3. Also, our pathway to teaching represents 26% of all bilingual Spanish teachers in SFUSD, And this year alone is 28% of bilingual Spanish teachers. Also in the coursework that they receive, there is anti-racist mindset, a holding high expectation for Latinx students. In high school, there is a native Spanish 3 honors course offered in some schools, lifting the status of the native language biliteracy for those students that have been, that are native speakers or they are bilingual students. Next, please. In terms of designated ELD, this year, of course, we got the Wonders materials for all the school sites, kindergarten to 5th grade, actually TK to 5th grade. And we're providing different PD opportunities during the early release Wednesdays. You can see here that it talks about the Wonders ELD implementation, the LPAC, and reclassification too. For middle school, there is PD in terms of these course routines and collaboration with the students in the content areas. We're glad to inform that we've been visiting schools using this opportunity integrated ELD learning walks. And during this time, we use a tool called the SFUSD Continual Effective Integrated ELD Practices, just to inform what is the instruction and how can size improve the instruction for EL students. The ethnic studies designated ELD expanded to more high schools, so students have the opportunity to take that course along with the ELD. In MPD, we have analyzed the reclassification days rates by ethnicity, and we have improved with the DLAC, the consulting and informing of parents about reclassification. And of course, we're engaging into a program of practice about how to improve the outcomes for Latinx in the reclassification rates. Amy is gonna tell us a little bit about the reclassification rates and for the past 2 years. Can you go to the next slides? And Amy, you're next.
Sure, thank you. I'm Amy Gottesfeld. I'm a supervisor of secondary programs and multilingual pathways. And we wanted to share the data that we've been examining with commissioners and community tonight as well. We have, first of all, we have the 2019-2020 reclassification outcomes. And these outcomes are similar to prior years as well. You can see we've disaggregated the results by language group, and our Spanish-speaking English learners are reclassifying at a much lower rate than other language groups. And you can, if we can go to the next slide, we can look at the outcomes for 2020, 2021. This was the pandemic year when the LPAC was disrupted by the pandemic. And so we really had very few results from the LPAC to use in our reclassification process. If you recall, the LPAC was started to be administered in February of 2020. And then in March of 2020, we moved to shelter in place. And so really only high school grades and a few middle schools were LPAC'd in 2020. And so you can see much fewer numbers. In fact, about half the numbers district-wide were reclassified in this school year. And it's interesting to see that the percentage is not as great. The difference between language groups is not as great. And our hypothesis is this is because it was the older grades, right? The high school grades that were reclassified, and that for our Spanish-speaking English learners, sometimes it takes a longer time to reach that 4 on the LPAC and to meet English proficiency in order to be reclassified. We're seeing similar trends this year with reclassification. We've only done round 1. And so we don't have, we just have some preliminary results that show the same pattern. We've done some analysis that looks at, what are the barriers to reclassification? And it really is reaching that level 4 on the LPAC. We see the gap between students who are eligible and students who are being reclassified has narrowed. So we are getting the paperwork back and actually achieving reclassification for most students who are eligible. But it is the challenge of that assessment, the pandemic, the interruption of language learning, the professional development we need to do to support teachers and effective practices for Latinx English learners, and just the ongoing work with families about the importance of reclassification, the importance of taking the LPAC and being there for all 4 sections of the test. And so that's some of the work that I will introduce Danielle Utley to share with you now.
Thank you, Amy. What a perfect segue. My name is Danielle Utley. I'm the Family Education Integration Specialist within the Multilingual Pathways Department, and I am the liaison to our District English Learners Advisory Committee. And if we could go on to the next slide, please. Ensuring that we have critical family partnerships, we do capitalize on the District English Learners Advisory Committee and host monthly meetings in Spanish, utilizing this space as an opportunity to provide resources to serve the unique needs of our Latinx families. Like Amy mentioned before that, we also have videos recorded for families to be able to understand the reclassification process and criteria. We have also identified different opportunities to develop and strengthen Latinx parent advisory councils at a few of our sites, including the Academy and Everett Middle School. Some of our other Latinx partnerships include in-person work with various of our community-based organizations, including the Latino Task Force. I was just recently there to provide information around the new student assignment process. Bi-monthly 411 Facebook live sessions with mission graduates on various topics, not toppings, I'm hungry, pizza toppings, but topics including reclassification, communication methods through SFUSD, parent view assessments, report cards, parent-teacher conferences, and so much more. And critical leadership opportunities for our families, including on the SSC, or the School Site Council, which is our decision-making body, PTSA, and Latinx PAC, to increase parental involvement and visibility at all of our school sites. Thank you. I'm not sure who's next.
If we can advance to the next slide, I believe that would be the end of the presentation. And I'll turn it back to Commissioner Bogus for the next step in the process.
All right, thank you so much for the presentation. Unless there are clarifying questions from commissioners, I would like to go to public comment, and then we'll take comments, questions from commissioners.
Okay, if you'd like to speak to this item, please raise your hand.
Buenas tardes, por favor levante su mano si desea añadir un comentario público. Gracias.
如果對啱啱嗰個報告咧有公眾發言的話咧，請你而家舉手啦。
Seeing one, Commissioner.
Okay, let's less than 2 minutes.
PAC, Michelle.
Yes, thank you so much. Good afternoon, commissioners and staff and members of the public. My name is Michelle Jacques-Menegas, and I am the coordinator for the Parent Advisory Council to the Board of Ed. And I just really want to appreciate the team for this presentation today. And I know that on a personal and professional level, I am honored to work with Danielle Utley in the collaboration of our parent advisory groups, and have so much respect for the work that she and the others do there. I just wanted us to really take note of the proof that our programs have in improving the outcomes for our Latinx students. Programs like AVID, credit recovery, these college and career programs, and as you heard staff say, these are on the chopping block. And I know that we have to pass a budget balancing plan, and I know none of these decisions are easy. However, I would just really highlight, we've heard from students also at recent PFCAC meetings and Board of Ed meetings about the real critical nature of these programs in their lives and their education and their career and life pathways. And I just really want us to prioritize these programs as we go forward in our extended budgeting processes, and make sure that we can find a way to keep these programs going for our Latinx students. Thank you.
That's it, Commissioner.
Right, thank you so much. And we will go to comments from board members, and we'll start with President Lopez.
Hi, thank you for this information and for all of the work that's been done. We passed the Latinx resolution 2 years ago, and before passing it unanimously, there was so much community input and force to bring this to light and to prioritize our Latinx students. So I appreciate the update. I'm always happy to see the work that's being done, that you all are carrying. And at the same time, even given what we just heard in public comment, it is so disheartening to know that an outcome would be hundreds of students directly, essentially being removed the opportunity to go to higher education, or numerous other examples of the areas we are saying aren't impacting students in a positive way. And so we're seeing these examples directly. I'm so excited to look at the numbers and be able to draw connections to the work that's been implemented and the experiences that our students have gained because of that, the opportunities they've been given because of that. And I want to continue celebrating, and I'm trying to find the joy and energy to do that while balancing the looming issues that we're dealing with. So I wanted to start with that. I have a few questions just because there are some exciting pieces that I picked up on and would love to learn more about, beginning with the ethnic studies designated ELD, what I believe are courses. Miguel, I think you touched a little bit on this, and I'm interested in learning what sites these are at, how many students are a part of this, when did this develop?
Thank you for that question, President Lopez. Amy works with the high schools. I work with elementary schools, so Amy's gonna be the person responding to your question.
Perdón, I think you were the one who mentioned it. So
I mentioned it, but Amy is in charge of high schools. Amy?
Yeah. So we created a new curriculum that is very much aligned and in parallel uses the content of ethnic studies that would serve as a designated ELD course. So the content of the course is ethnic studies. It was developed by a longtime ethnic studies teacher, Connie So, and then it's really driven by language learning is at the heart of the curriculum as well. And so students have an opportunity to learn language while they're exploring identity and issues of power and racial privilege. And it's been very successful. It's implemented at now 4 schools. And it's also being used in our newcomer programs as a sheltered ethnic studies curriculum. I'm happy to share a website with the curriculum so you can take a closer look at it. And we did have to, to submit it to UC Doorways for designated ELD approval. So students are earning B credit. They're earning English credit for that course.
This is so incredible. I'm so, I can't believe I hadn't learned more about it and have been given the opportunity to elevate it. Could you share where this is, where we can have access to more information? And I'll jot it down, but I also want it to be accessible to people who are listening.
I do believe that the website with the curriculum is an SFUND internal website, but I can find out how I can make an overview of that available to the public, so that you can see an outline of the curriculum.
Yeah, that would be great. And I'm sure you've known, especially in our curriculum meetings, we've had conversations about how we can implement crucial content that English language learners are missing because of this designation into what we know is still the teaching of the English language. So the fact that this is now, and there's an ethnic studies curriculum dedicated to serving our students is what I wish was highlighted more. I'll pause my questions for now and look forward to hearing more.
All right, thank you so much, President Lopez. I will go to Commissioner Alexander.
Thank you, Commissioner Bogus. Yeah, I just want to second what President Lopez said about the high school course. That is super exciting. And I'm curious on that one, if there are, how does the outlook look for expanding it to other high schools? Because I know that's been one of our challenges is we have some schools that are really investing in ethnic studies, and then other high schools have been slower. I'm just curious, is there interest from other high schools to implement it other than the 4 that are already doing it?
Yeah, I would say it's been a process, like just as people learn about the curriculum. We just presented a couple months ago to high school principals at the high school principal lead meeting. So we generated a lot of interest there. It's challenging with master scheduling to identify, where to put this in people's schedules, but I think that principals are trying to figure out how to make that happen.
Great. And if there's things we can do at a policy level to support that, because again, I think what we don't want to see happen is what happened with the ethnic studies resolution 10 years, almost like 10 years ago, but a while ago, for 2014, where we get a really good pilot going and then it doesn't expand system wide. So, but that's super exciting. And then the other piece I just wanted to highlight was that I'm really excited about is also the alternative high school, which I think, I don't know if you could just say a little bit more about that, but I think it's just really, really important for students who are not able to access traditional schooling, which is a lot of our recent immigrant students have to work because that's the only way to support themselves. And I just think that's another example of a really innovative program that is directly meeting the needs of the community and really should be lifted up as another great success that you all have worked on.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to share more about that program. I'll just, lift up the leadership of Elise Castro as, coordinating the implementation. It did come out of a design challenge that involved community stakeholders and, our partners in many different divisions that realized the vision or created a vision for it. It's serving about 50 students currently, and we do have hopes of expanding it and also expanding, I think, the amount of time students are spending with us in that program. It's being housed currently at Hilltop. That the site is being used in the morning for the Hilltop students, and in the afternoon for the newcomer students. And there are newcomer students in the Hilltop program as well. I think that the goal is to also expand our partnership with early college and city college opportunities so that we can really make it a bridge program for those young people who are young adults and really transitional age. Many of them are 20, even 21 years old, and we want to make the bridge to city college an easier one for them, because it is very challenging for many recently arrived immigrant young adults to find their home and find success at City College without the support of our folks. So it's very exciting that we were able to open it, start that program during the pandemic, and there's just a lot of opportunity for growth.
Yeah, that's really super exciting. And I think it's going to be a bigger need. What I'm hearing is also that more and more families, as work starts to come back, people, have rent debt and other types of debt from the pandemic and are just really desperate. And so there's pressure on older teenagers above age 16 to work. And so I think there's going to be more and more young people that have to take advantage of that as well. But as a district, it's just really important for us to offer it. And I think your city college point is a really well taken one as well. I was working with a family recently that had an 18-year-old immigrant young man who came and really, really wanted, or I think he was like 17 and almost about to turn 18, So he was technically able to enroll in SFUSD and really, really wanted to, for the reason you're saying, is he really wanted to get the support from SFUSD before he had to go to City College, knowing that it was going to be more of an anonymous experience, right? It's the college experience. And so I think providing that transition is just really critical. And anyway, as an educator, I just want to say I'm really excited about the work you all are doing on this, and it's really important and meaningful.
Thank you, Commissioner Alexander. I can go next with my comments. I think for me, just lifting up how valuable this work is and appreciating all the hard work that we're doing, but I think also having concerns about our outcomes, especially in regards to reclassification. And so I think my first question in regard to that is, what do sites need? What do families need? What do students need? For us to kind of have the reclassification rates that we need, especially for Latino students.
Miguel, do you want to take a
That's
first?
That's a great question. And I think one of the things that we have tried to improve is the literacy in L1, what we call a Spanish biliteracy, in order to have an easy transfer to the English literacy. One of the things that we have done in the past 2 years is have instructional materials for reading and phonics in Spanish. So then students would get very comfortable, because it's easier to read in Spanish than English, because it's phonetic. And then we hope that the students, the reading strategy is practically the same, but they are able to solve text easily in order to improve the outcomes for the transfer between students that are going in third grade. They're reading all the reading strategies and they're just engaging into text in English. Also, another thing that we have done is getting the designated ELD materials, the Wonders materials. We have PDs for teachers across the district to attend for during the early release Wednesday. And one of the topics that we are talking about is addressing is LPAC and reclassification, and they're coming the next 2 months. So then we can provide teachers a better understanding what is how to read the LPAC results and what are the better outcomes for reclassification for Latino students. Not only Latino students, but also other students. Amy or Danielle, anything you want to add?
Sure, I can speak to what the families need or are requesting. In terms of what Miguel just shared, I mean, one thing was a recommendation around the purchase of the Wonders curriculum, but beyond that, families were requesting that staff at our school sites have a better understanding of what the criteria is for reclassification, right? Often a lot of our staff members don't understand what that looks like. And on the flip side of that is ensuring that our families fully understand what it is, first of all, what reclassification means for their children, opening up access to different curriculum and courses, and what the criteria is, right? So that being said, providing an opportunity to have the reclassification workshops by language is critical and has been helpful. And then creating the videos so that families can access them and have multiple modes of understanding how to access it. And then really using the resources that we have, including City College. I think there was a time in the past that I believe Presidenta Lopez asked about courses for our families, English courses, right? And so partnering with City College, bringing them into the space with the DLAC to be able to share those resources that they offer. They offer free English courses for our families. But yeah, I think a little bit of everything in terms of the partnership with our teachers, PD, and then ensuring that they understand what it means.
I just want to add one last thing. In what we call the English Learners IOC Committee, we have been going to school sites, and I think I mentioned that, going to school sites to see the implementation of integrated ELD, because designated ELD is just one part of the day, but the rest of the day, students can engage into with complex texts and in collaboration and having academic conversations throughout the day. So we go into sites and we just are collating data, and sites come up with next steps for that. Amy, you want to add something for Middle High School?
Yeah, ditto on the instructional rounds for integrated ELD. It's really, what we're seeing is a lot of quiet classrooms and not a lot of opportunities for English learners to engage in academic discourse. And so really focusing on that in our early release PD for both middle school and high school educators, and just reminding people of all the routines and structures and norms that we've been working on for years. This is not new, but it's new coming back from the pandemic. It's almost like it's hard. People have forgotten. Students are shy. There's a lot of hesitancy in talking to each other, and so we just have to really dig into those structures and those routines so that we can provide safe spaces for students to practice oral language. So same for secondary. We're seeing it K-12.
No, that's super helpful to hear. I think one thing, I guess I'm curious if you could add on, understanding that right now we are proposing with a budget balancing plan of moving some of these programs that are supporting students kind of out of the central part of our budget. Kind of with that not in mind, like what would it actually kind of take staffing wise for us to support students and families at school sites? Kind of imagining that we're moving things out of the central part of our budget, but understand that we're going to have to actually kind of rebuild and kind of redevelop kind of the foundation of how we're serving students and families, and just really kind of what you feel like is core for us to do that, to really fulfill the purpose and the mission of this resolution, as well as kind of the mission of us as a district as a whole.
I can share a little bit of my opinion on this topic, which would be, I mean, clearly like the support for parent liaisons is really foundational in supporting Latinx families at school sites. And I'm not sure where the budget for that is proposed in school site budgets. Those aren't centrally funded positions right now, but we know how important those roles are. That we have to have language capacity at school sites in order to support Spanish-speaking families. And then I would say that, we are anticipating some pretty significant reductions in our biliteracy, dual language immersion, and Spanish world language programs. And I do think that while I think we need some correction, like that we've been maybe double dipping and over supporting, and there's the need for consolidation, or some, enrollment has declined. We have some very, very small classrooms right now. And so we need to think about how to better be more efficient in how we are organized as a system. We're worried about the impact that these cuts are going to have on our programs, and the message that it's going to send to Latinx families about how much we value as a district and as a community, the bilingualism and biculturalism that they bring to our schools, that students and families bring to our schools. And so definitely worrying about the impact, both short-term and long-term.
Also, I also want to add that my team is super small. In elementary, I just have 2 TSAs dedicated to Spanish biliteracy programs, and we have 23 school sites, and just 2 TSAs for ELD implementation. So while it seems that we have a lot of positions somehow in PIF and MPD, those positions are at the side, like Amy was saying. We were supporting the school sites with this budget, but centrally our team is mighty, but it's small, it's tiny. Danielle, anything you want to add?
Yes, Amy, thank you for elevating the need for our parent liaisons or family liaisons. I think it's really critical that we do have a point person at the school site when families walk through the door that welcomes them in Spanish, in their heritage language, right? I mean, so many times they don't even know where to turn if they're unable to communicate effectively and just for the most basic need, you know, that can really impact a family and really discourage them from asking anything. In terms of at the central office, there's basically me that supports all of our ELACs, right? Developing and strengthening ELACs at the site level, but having that connection, having a point person at the school, whether it is our EL coordinator or our family liaison, which I think is critical to build those family partnerships, is going to be key. Yeah, I mean, I have a counterpart and she supports our Cantonese and Mandarin speaking families, but there's a lot of schools, there are 2 of us. And so we have to, if we are allocating resources to the school or you know, trying to define what's going to work best or be most effective, definitely ensuring that there's someone at the site that's going to be able to communicate effectively with families is going to be key.
Thank you for that. I have one more question and I'll go to Commissioner Alexander. If you could talk a little bit about kind of the funding structures that support the work that you kind of lifted up in your presentation, kind of how much of that funding is kind of grants or other kind of short-term funding, how much of it is funding that kind of comes through kind of our general budget versus kind of through, you know, city funding streams that are kind of directly tied. And just, I guess I'm just trying to get a feel of how varied the funding pot is overall, and how much that kind of complicates the work that is trying to be done and accomplished. And so I guess you don't have to give me a full budget breakdown in this moment, but if you could just generally, I guess, give a feel about kind of how that exists in the moment and how that is existing kind of in the projections forward. I understand we don't have a budget yet, but kind of a plan of what's going to be pushed from the center of our budget.
Are you talking about MPD? We're talking about MPD where our unrestricted budget is very limited. We also use SEG money, Title III money, and PIF money to support our positions. Amy has some grants that maybe you want to talk about it, but definitely we can give you a more detailed explanation of our budgets.
I would say about half of our MPD staff is funded on unrestricted and SCGEL funds, and then a quarter is funded on PIF, and then we do have the SAIL grant that the partnership with early college or CCR. We recently will be voting on to accept a grant that we partnership with the UC Berkeley Graduate School of Education, Bay Area Writing Project tomorrow night. So that will fund some of our work, and then the county grant that we partner with the refugee and immigrant student RISE SF. I'm forgetting Angie Romano's program in school health. We have a grant that funds about 0.6 of one of our content specialists that supports the newcomer programs, a counselor on special assignments. So yeah, we've been piecing it together to try to hold together a team. The majority of the cuts that have been talked about in the budget presentations are really our school site budgets as well, though, and a lot of that funding is for our world language and FLES positions, like the Arabic programs, the Vietnamese programs, the world language positions in middle schools, and then the gap, the funding that we've provided to school sites to fund the gap of enrollment so that they can not have a combined 4-5 class, but they can keep small class sizes in 4 and 5, for example, or in middle school where we have low enrollment in some of our immersion programs in middle school. So majority of that 25.6 FTE is site-based, but there are about 4 FTE, 4 or 5 FTE that are funded on our team with that resource.
Thank you for that. I have one more question and I'll go to Commissioner Alexander. If you could talk a little bit about kind of the funding structures that support the work that you kind of lifted up in your presentation, kind of how much of that funding is kind of grants or other kind of short-term funding that comes through kind of our general budget versus kind of through, you know, city funding streams that are kind of directly tied. And just, I guess I'm just trying to get a feel of how varied the funding pot is overall, and how
Hope that was helpful.
No, that's exactly what I was hoping you would respond with. I think that's really helpful for me. I just would say, I think for me too, is how do we create more stable funding kind of within our district in the way that we fund things. So programs, department, areas of work just kind of have more stability and consistency. I mean, we kind of have a better idea of what it will take for them to kind of reach their ultimate goal. Because I think the sad part is, even though we are projecting cuts, even if we were giving the same amount of money, I don't think it would be enough for us to do everything that we wanted. And so I'm really looking at the new year as a time for us really to kind of rethink, reallocate, and really kind of bring more support to this work and these energies, and really make sure a lot of the students and communities that have been in the periphery can be in the center and really enjoy the success that we are experiencing kind of as a district in other places. So thank you so much for your work and your responses. Commissioner Alexander.
Yeah, building on this, and actually I was going to say this earlier, but it fits with what we were just talking about too. So I was listening to the conversation around family engagement, and being reminded that we just had a conversation in the Rules Committee around interpretation and translation, which I think is really directly related to this. And we heard a lot of the same kind of comments from parents as to what you all reflected. And I think, and then to what Commissioner Bogus was just saying, and in this conversation around we have this work, there's pieces of this work that are happening in different departments. And I think there is some redundancy. I actually think it ends up making the work more siloed and less effective. I think that a lot of the work that you all are doing in CNI is incredibly powerful. And again, what I see is that sometimes it doesn't get to lead, right? I gave the ethnic studies example earlier, right? It's like, so it's kind of optional in some ways as to whether schools listen to CNI, right? And then it's like, well, we're thinking about parent engagement and language access. We've got CNI thinking about it. We've also got RISE over in student family support thinking about it. And we've got the interpretation folks, which sort of span a couple different departments thinking about it. And so you have all these folks centrally thinking about it, but then how does that actually get received at the school site, and what actually happens, right? And I think, and this isn't really on any of your plates, I think there's like actually a larger question around how do we effectively organize central supports for sites in a way that's aligned and coordinated. And I've said this before, I really think that your department is doing these phenomenal pieces of work. And then I guess it really frustrates me when it doesn't get out there. And so I think in addition to the budget question, where obviously we have to make cuts, I think there's this question of how do we align the resources and the work so that it actually impacts schools in a profound way.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Alexander, for your comments. Is there any other comments from staff before we move forward, or any other questions or comments from other commissioners? Yeah, please, President Lopez.
Thank you again. I was wondering about the reclassification process and any updates or movement there have been to implement other ways of measuring student success that's outside of the LPAC.
Yeah, unfortunately, the criteria for reclassification is determined by the CDE, and that there is the number one criteria, which is the LPAC, is kind of a non-negotiable, that we're actually not allowed to use other measures for that first criteria, other than the alternative LPAC, which is used for students with IEP. And that's being implemented for the first time this year. And we're really excited about the possibilities that is going to, the possibilities for duly identified students, for English learners who have IEPs. And we would really like to increase our reclassification rate of those students in particular. And we think that this assessment will help us do that. But yeah, it is determined by the state, and it is the number one barrier, students not scoring a 4, because they have multiple opportunities to take the RI assessment or the F&P assessment. And the LPAC is the higher bar. It's the harder measure to meet. When we use the CELT was the easier measure. And the reading score was the harder one to meet, but we've seen that shift with the LPAC. It's a harder assessment.
Yeah, I was teaching the first year they implemented it, and it was difficult for teachers to administer. So with this alternative LPAC, we'll be seeing the outcomes of that not until the fall of next year.
You know, I don't know when the results for that are returned. I think it's administered throughout the year, and then we'll either see it in late spring or along with the results of the LPAC, which we received over the course of the summer. It was super late this year. We didn't get LPAC results until the beginning of August. And again, that's outside of our control. I would also like to mention that the other criteria for reclassification that we've recently had to make some adjustments to based on the state audit was the parent consultation. So in the past, we just like notified parents that their child was going to be reclassified, but now we were told by the state that we really needed to engage in a meaningful consultation process. And so we've implemented a few different strategies, but teachers are supposed to actually call families, the caregiver, and have a conversation about reclassification and what it means, and ask for their input and approval before the before reclassification takes place. And so it may seem like, of course, everyone wants their child to be reclassified, but what we were finding is that families didn't really fully understand what it meant, and some parents are excited and want their child to be reclassified, but also want their student to continue to have the benefits of designated or ELD or to receive services. So we're having those conversations much more robustly now, and it's taken a lot of conversations with school site leaders and teachers about what meaningful consultation actually means.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about this is I think that's part of the work in our education of what reclassification is, because it has that stigma of removing students' opportunities to take part in other things, which is what I'm now seeing you're developing in other ways to give them access to that. And so if it helps families feel better that they are getting additional supports in the English language, then it might ease the idea of being a student who needs to be reclassified. Well, thank you for your work.
Yeah, and I think for me, just closing comments, just once again, a lot of appreciation for the work that you do and the kind of the things that you're holding. I think for us moving forward, it's just going to be really important to know what will it take to kind of fulfill like the mission of this resolution, and what kind of staffing changes that we kind of need to kind of adjust or make to kind of make these things real. I think as much as we are shrinking the size of our district through the balanced budgeting plan, I think there still will be flexibility when we get to our actual budget to kind of figure out how we maintain, stabilize, or kind of wind things down slowly, or find ways to find other streams of funding to really build up or expand vital parts of our district, like the work that you kind of brought up today for me represents. And really also figuring out how we close the gap between kind of what's happening centrally and what's happening at school sites. And for me, just feeling really strongly about the need to have multiple family liaisons kind of at school sites, both to support around language needs, but also just around all the different struggles that families have and kind of needing someone to reach out to and communicate to, and just figuring out ways to pay for it with the very limited funds that we have. But just being able to hear from you about the struggles that we're going to face and the reductions that we might see in our graduation related to some of the proposed reductions that we kind of have presented to us from the superintendent's office is good for us to think about as we prioritize things to put back into the budget, and how we ensure that all students and families feel supported, seen in our district. So thank you so much. And I think with that, we will move to item B, which are our two action items for the evening. With that, we have item 1, and I will go to staff, who I think is leading a presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Bogus. And yes, this evening for the Queer Transgender PAC presentation, we have 2 of our chiefs, our Chief of Staff, Jill Hokendijk, as well as Chief Mele Lau Smith, who's over our parent community services and student services.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Priestley. I'm Jill Hokendijk, Chief of Staff, and I will get our presentation kicked off. Thank you, Ms. Lenoff, for working our slides. The QT PAC resolution was introduced by Commissioner Collins on November 9th, 2021, and was referred by board action to the Curriculum and Program Committee, as well as the Budget and Business Services Committee for discussion and recommendation to the Board of Education. So staff is here this evening to review the programmatic components of the resolution. I will be presenting tonight along with Chief Mele Lau Smith. Chief Dawn Kamalanathan is unable to be with us this evening, but I will be sharing information on her behalf. Go to the next slide, please. The QT PAC resolution calls for immediate action to uplift the visibility and voices of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community within SFUSD. Next slide, please. And for the purposes of the resolution review this evening, we have identified 4 areas in the resolution for that review. The first of which is the formulation and support of a Queer Trans Parent Advisory Council, or QT PAC. Next slide, please. The second area is around inclusivity and visibility, which involves inclusion both of curriculum and classroom materials, as well as representation on forms and communications. The third area is facilities, which involves signage options on restrooms. And the fourth area is the fiscal impact. And while we won't be reviewing this component tonight, the fiscal impact will be included on an upcoming Budget and Business Services Committee meeting. Next slide, please. I just want to quickly orient us to the structure for this presentation. For each of those components, we will be sharing the following: work that is already underway, shifts and implications from the resolution, and then finally, recommendations and considerations. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Lau Smith.
Hello, thank you, Jill, and good evening, commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity. So I'll take you through the next 3 slides around the different areas that Jill mentioned. So with respect to forming and supporting for a QT PAC, currently the LGBTQ student services in the Student and Family Services Division organizes and meets bilingually. I'm thinking of the other presentation, bi-weekly with 15 student leaders from across 11 high schools. And that's part of the Queer Trans Advisory Council. This is an all student leader council that meets weekly. Some of the shifts and implications with the parent advisory, which is exclusively made up of parents and care voices, while student voice is optional, is how do these 2 entities sort of work together and not create different silos in terms of if the parent advisory decides to include student voice, which voices will be prioritized and from where. If the advisory chooses not to include student representation, then how do the student and parent advisory committees work together? Some recommendations and considerations to think about in terms of the shifts and implications is that the QT PAC prioritizes incorporating the student voices and also includes students from the QTAC and the LGBTQ students from the advisory council. So sort of integrating those 2, but still letting them be their separate entities, and that the QT PAC works with staff from LGBT student services as well as the broader Student and Family Services Division, so that we can work together to ensure that we're sort of the greater of our parts rather than individual advisory committees. You can go to the next slide, please. In terms of inclusivity and visibility, the work underway is broad and it crosses the Student and Family Service Division along with curriculum and instruction to look at incorporating the inclusive history and practices. Some of the things that are ongoing is working with the libraries department to ensure that there are LGBTQ+ books in stock in our elementary school libraries and accessible for students as well as for use by teachers. Working jointly with the curriculum and instruction division, designing curricular development and central training around history and social science and ethnic study teachers, rising up LGBTQ+ history and folks. Professional development is another area that both divisions work together on, and then just continue to align the advocacy and the solidarity amongst the other family advisory council, specifically the African American Parent Advisory Council, the Community Advisory Council for Special Education, the District English Learner Advisory Council, the Indian Education Parent Advisory Council, the Migrant Education Parent Advisory Council, and the Matua Advisory Council, and the PAC. And so some of the work that happens is that the Student and Family Service Division convenes the different staff members of those groups and tries to create a space where we can all come together and be coordinated. With that, we would want to continue that work and just incorporate the Q2 PAC into that work that's already happening, coordinating across the different advisory committees. Next slide, please. Other work that is underway in terms of inclusivity and visibility is there has been gender inclusive language guidance that was developed and is distributed annually. And this was also a joint project between the Student and Family Services Division and Curriculum Instruction. We also have an elementary teaching guide. A new product that has come out is working with sites and how to update student name and gender marker within our SFUSD systems in Synergy. So making sure that school staff know how to do that within the system we have. And then the most recent guide that has been created is around creating forms with gender inclusive language that would also be rolled out throughout the district schools and departments and divisions, so that as we move forward with this, the forms that we create will collect information from students and family and be inclusive. These shifts and implications, I think, with much of the work that we are committed to as an anti-racist district is just asking ourselves and staff to be more reflective and intentional and inclusive in when we create things, in this particular instance forms, but generally when we're creating curriculum and communication things. So what the recommendation would be to look at this guide and include the language into the administrative regulations that we already have around board policies around non-discrimination in personnel, non-discrimination and harassment in non-binary, transgender, and gender non-conforming students. And putting this guide into administrative regulations just allows us to have one place where it is accessible, and also allows the board to note that this is within these policies, creating forms with gender inclusive language is important. And of course, distributing this guide to all division heads and site leaders. And I think the next slide is back to you, Jill, around facilities.
Yes, correct. Thank you, Melly. As you can see here, there is work already underway to procure and post signage to ensure all single stall restrooms have all gender signage. We currently have a project design standard that calls for all gender signage for every single stall restroom. Some shifts and implications are included here. We don't currently have a district-wide inventory of operable single-stall restrooms, so we would need site and central division support to assist the facilities department to identify restrooms that require signage. Once we have this information, we would be able to determine more specific costs. Right now, signage is installed in the context of current projects. So if there's a desire that this happens faster, we would need to appropriately resource a project manager to assist with that task. The approximate cost for signage and installation is about $250 to $300 a restroom. The next slide, please. As I shared at the onset, the fiscal impact is a component of this resolution, and that information will be reviewed at the January 5th Budget and Business Services Committee meeting. And with that, that concludes the last slide, I think, is a link to the resolution. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much for that. I don't know if we had it from the authors of the resolution.
Yeah, I guess I just
Yeah,
wanted to
please.
say, I appreciate it. I just wanted to say the presentation highlights all the work that staff, I mean, this resolution is an extension of work that has already been really spearheaded by parents, students, and staff in our district for the last several decades. And even when I started at SFUSD, I remember it was a time when teachers in the nation were getting fired for being openly gay or lesbian. And I think I just want to celebrate the fact that as a district, we've always been at the forefront of really moving, changing policies and addressing our climate and our culture to make our schools safe and welcoming. And there's still a lot of work to do. But I wanted to say I really, really appreciate the students and the parents and the staff who have gotten us to where we are, and that this is a resolution that will just hopefully continue that work and create really, I mean, like I said, a lot of the changes that have been initiated were initiated by staff or students or current parents, but there hasn't been really an intentional process for us to continue to reflect and improve our systems. So this would just be an extension of that. And thanks for the opportunity to just provide that additional comment.
Thank you. I think now we'll go to public comment, and we will give 2 minutes per commenter.
If you'd like to speak to this item, please raise your hand, and can I have that interpreted, please?
Buenas tardes. Por favor, levante su mano si desea añadir un comentario público. Gracias.
各位家長，如果想就住呢一個QT， 即係話好易性人嘅項目講呢個公眾發言的話咧，請而家舉手啦，唔該。
Michelle?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Again, Michelle here. And I just want to say how excited and thrilled I am and the PAC is about this resolution. We do a great job in our district about including a lot of folks with different affinity groups and hearing from different voices specifically. And this is just another step in that to be even more inclusive, and one that is much needed and long overdue. I want to thank you as someone who identifies as queer and someone whose kids also identify on that spectrum. It just means a lot, and we're really thrilled, and I'm thrilled to work with the staff that get assigned, as well as families and students, to continue to increase our inclusivity and our collaboration as we work on district level issues. Thank you so much.
M.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is M. I am on the Parent Advisory Council of SFUSD. I'm a member there, but I'm also a non-binary two-spirit parent, and I'm very excited to be here. First, I'd like to say thank you to Commissioner Collins for not forgetting about queer trans parents in our school district. This resolution we were talking about years ago before the pandemic hit, and when the pandemic hit, things had to pause. So I'm glad, thank you so much, Commissioner Collins, for not forgetting our voices and moving in this resolution forward. What I want to say also, since we're talking more about curriculum, and I'm not going to bring up the budget part, I'll bring that up at the budget committee, is that you will never find bigger advocates for queer and trans students than queer and trans parents. We will be the biggest advocates in SFUSD, and we have been. We have been knocking at your doors. Why are these forms still cis-sexist? Why is this form like this? Why is this not saying this? I have sent dozens upon dozens of emails in the past 5 years. And I just became an SFUSD kindergarten parent this year. 5 years. That is only of me. There are other parents you are going to hear from who have been part of the idea to create this queer and trans parent advisory council, and you will hear from them. This work has been going on for over a decade to get this here. It has taken over a decade to get to this point. Please make sure to hear our voices. Please recommend to the full board to pass a queer trans parent advisory council now. Thank you. And thank you also to Mele Lau Smith, who listened to some of my emails that I sent before about why non-binary was not on the form for enrollment. And that was the only staff who actually listened and put that on there. We have still more work to do of changing and making our forms gender inclusive, but thank you, Mele.
Brandy. Brandy.
Thank you. Hi, I'm a public school parent and speaking in wholehearted support of this fantastic resolution. Commissioner Collins, thank you so much for your leadership. We have seen attacks on school boards all throughout the nation, and particularly on queer families throughout the nation in this really ugly, toxic anti-CRT atmosphere our nation is living in. So this is just such a bright beacon of light to the nation. I have talked to parents in Virginia who are so thrilled that you are doing this. So I just encourage the board to support this unanimously here at the committee and then on to the full board. And I think we will see a positive ripple effect. This is something that I think will galvanize and encourage a lot of queer families throughout the US. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you, everyone.
Hold on 1 second, please. Okay. Martin. Martin?
Yes. Hi. Thank you, commissioners, staff, and members of the public for indulging my comment. I'm a bi and transparent in the district. I have 2 kids in elementary and high school, and I want to lend my voice of support to the QT PAC resolution. I would love to see this QT PAC come to light as a transparent, and at times I felt silence and invisible. We need to give queer and trans parents the same voice as other parents have. If they're bringing us together like we have our students in the Queer Trans Advisory Council, it is wonderful that you are working directly with school sites on identifying signage for stalls in the restrooms with all gender signage. But even parents in those schools have rattled cages, talked to facilities, principals, etc., and we're still staring at gendered signage on all gender restrooms 5 years later. That's a big deal. I would love to see this go through. It has my full throated support. Thank you very much.
We have Teacher Carrie.
Hi, my name is Carrie, and I am an SFUSD educator and the parent of a gender-curious SFUSD first grader. I am so excited to be speaking in support of this PAC. This is going to be more inclusive for families, which is always better for our students. I also just wanted to reiterate what Em said, that queer and trans parents will be advocating for my kid, which is so exciting. At my own school where I work and my kid goes in SFUSD, my kid doesn't even know where the all gender bathroom is. And I am privileged in so many ways, including being a teacher at their school, to rectify this situation. And that's how I know that this is still a massive issue of equity and privilege. You know, I think this PAC is something incredibly exciting and incredibly urgent. And I want to thank everyone that's worked and led on this. Thank you so much.
Okay, we have Salidia. I'm sorry. Saltina. I think I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Hi, my name is Celestina, she, her. I am a parent of a non-binary, they, them, 12-year-old. And they just now, when I asked if there was anything they wanted me to say, they said that they feel like there's a lot of subtle transphobia in their school. And that being said, I feel like we are at a very supportive school. And I feel like the school and community are very progressive in so many ways, including in support of LGBTQ kids and families. And yet I feel fairly invisible. And I feel like it has been, well, y'all tell me, but how many years has it been? And I was involved in passing the legislation that was supposed to be teaching our children LGBTQ rights history and disability rights history. And to my knowledge, that has never been implemented, even as progressive of a school as we have. Our family coalition came and did a presentation. SFUSD has declined our family coalition's free curriculum, where I think almost every other school district in the Bay Area has taken advantage of our family coalition's curriculum, except for SFUSD, because as they say, we're already doing just fine. And that is not true at all. I feel like if at a school that is as progressive as we're at, still has room for improvement, including the all gender restroom signage, and including actually implementing curriculum where kids shouldn't even have to be dealing with even subtle transphobia. That, you know, we have an opportunity to be supporting our kids, whatever their gender presentation or experiences, and whatever their sexuality is. We need to be supporting our kids to be the best selves that they can be in the world. Thank you so much.
Allison.
Hi, I'm Allison. I'm the parent of a queer middle schooler who I know endures misgendering, dead naming, bullying on a daily basis at their school, from both kids and staff alike. I am so grateful for the work of the parents and staff who are putting this together, because as Mari said, there will be no greater advocate for our queer kids than our queer adults, our queer parents. Martin mentioned things like all gender inclusive bathrooms. There's a mention of inclusive forms. Those are fights that my family has had to fight just this year. So I'm so grateful to Commissioner Collins, who I've known for years. And one thing I can say without question is that she has always been a steadfast ally of the LGBTQ community. So I am so grateful that this is happening on behalf of my child and the rest of their community. Thank you.
Tara.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect, thanks. Sorry, I have a weird speaker thing going on. I'm at work still. I'm a SFUSD teacher, parent, and former student, and this resolution just makes me so excited. Sorry. Growing up, there wasn't a community, right? And so in San Francisco, since I've been around for a while, I just think this is a great step. And as a parent of a child who sometimes questions his own gender identity, I think this is really exciting. And I just thank you so much for what you've done, Allison. Commissioner Collins, I'm very excited. Thank you so much. I'm done.
That's it, Commissioner.
I think we had Alita Fisher also with her hand raised, and
I'm sorry.
Brittany O'Connor.
Okay, Alita.
Thank you. I'll be short and sweet. As the advocacy chair of the Community Advisory Committee for Special Education, we are really excited about the formation of the QT PAC. the opportunity for more parents to have the ability to share space in an official advisory committee, to have the opportunity to hopefully present to the Board of Education, to collaborate alongside with other advisory committees. We really hope to have the opportunity to work together and hope that this resolution will be passed. Thank you, Commissioner Collins, and thank you everyone else for supporting it.
Who else did you say, Commissioner?
Brittany O'Connor.
Hi, my name is Brittany O'Connor. I'm a school psychologist at James Lick Middle School, and I am in support of this resolution. I think it's really important. I'm also the chair of the SPED committee for UESF for the district, and just somebody earlier was talking about inclusion and how important all of this is coming off of Inclusive Schools Week. This is a great resolution to put forward now. And I work with a lot of students who are bullied, who are questioning their identity and sexuality and all of this, and they're trying to figure things out. And then I have parents who are often coming to me like, what do I do? Where do I go? And it would be so wonderful to be able to say there's a group of parents we know that are meeting in an advisory committee for our district to provide them a space and a community where other people might understand and be able to share their stories with them. So I thrive and support.
It's just short form. For your comment. With that, we'll go to comments from the board, and I think we'll ask if everyone can mute.
I'm trying to mute them now, Commissioner. Okay.
Perfect. And I think I'm going to take privilege of being chair to give comments first and then go to my fellow commissioners. I think for me, just to kind of lift up the kind of budgetary moment that we're in, of like essentially being recommended to not have any new expenditures unless they're urgent, and of like the utmost importance. And so I would just say like this falls into that category for me, and it's something that I feel like we need to figure a way to prioritize and identify, hopefully at the budget committee, what we can potentially cut or remove to ensure that we have funding to ensure that this is possible. I feel like it's very important for us to make sure that we're being inclusive and really making sure there's a space for all the communities in our school district to be seen. One thing I do feel like would be helpful, if not added to this resolution, maybe a following resolution kind of around the same time of adding the names of the members of the committee, just so that we can have people in these positions as quickly as possible, and really have them kind of playing the roles that we need for them to support. One of the struggles that I have, though I will just be transparent, is with the structure and kind of the way that our advisory committees work in our district. I don't feel like they have enough responsibility and authority or compensation for what we really need for them to do for us as a district. And so I would just kind of lift up for us kind of moving forward to figure out how we create more of a structured role for our advisory committees, to hold us accountable and to monitor us as a district, and really to give us back that feedback that we need to take actions to improve things for our communities here in SFUSD, but definitely plan to support the resolution as we will hopefully make a positive recommendation to send it forward to the budget committee. And I will end my comments there and go to Commissioner Alexander. Then we'll have Commissioner Collins, and then we'll have President Lopez.
Thank you. I just want to start by thanking Commissioner Collins for your leadership on this. I think this is a really important and long overdue move. And I know you haven't done it yourself, which I think is a sign of good leadership, which is that you've been working in collaboration with community and developing this resolution over a long time. So so thank you for putting it forth. And I know all the issues that people have spoken to. I won't take the time to repeat them, but I've heard of them numerous times from other parents who've reached out to me independently, whether it be signage or student experience. All those things have been reflected across our district. Even though I think we have intended to make a commitment around a lot of these things, our follow through has been spotty. And so I think that would be, I fully support this. I guess my question would be around the implementation, and in particular, Commissioner Bogus referred to the staffing thing. I guess I would want to know, like, I think this is an area we definitely need to invest funds in. I'm not convinced that a full-time central staff is necessarily the right way to invest those funds. Like, I wonder if paying the members of the committee would be better. I don't know. Maybe there's a different way of thinking about this, that where we invest funding in a way that actually really ensures that these things get done. Maybe it is a central staff, but I also would like to hear from Chief Laus Smith around that, because I know that she's done a lot of thinking around sort of restructuring the department and having people work in teams and that sort of thing. So I also wouldn't want to create a staff position that undermines that effort. So anyway, I'm all for it. I actually think we need to make investments, and that's one of the reasons why, honestly, I presented the alternative budget balancing plan. Was I think we need to make more cuts at upper management and other areas that are not effective in order to keep our investments in schools, but also make additional investments in priority areas just like this. So I fully support the resolution and the funding. My only question would be, how does the funding get used in the most effective way to make sure that this work actually happens?
Does staff have a response to that, or is that something? Yes, please.
Sure. Thank you for the comments and the question. I don't have a specific answer. I'd have to think something about it, but I think that's the next step as we think about what calls for the resolution, to sort of do an overall audit of what it would take to continue the work that is already underway that we talked about and incorporate this new work into it. But I appreciate those comments to add to that thinking.
If no more questions from Commissioner Alexander, we'll go to Commissioner Collins.
I guess I'm a little confused by some of the questions around, I think being somebody that was, like, I guess, an integral member of the APAC, we've been building parent advisory groups over the last 20 years, let's say. And we started with the PAC. And then so I think, and what I've seen is that each group in a way is reflective in some ways of how it's resourced, right? Because the APAC was funded through an investment in the Ali program, right? Which was to support African-American students. And then there was a portion of that work that said, okay, we need families to be able to advocate, because we saw a lot of parents were saying they needed support in advocating for their kids. And that involvement has actually supported the work of Ali. So it's kind of it's a reciprocal relationship. The more that we've invested in the APAC, and we do have a full-time staff member that is dedicated to supporting that work at a district level. And then also individual site-based APACs, she supports them she doesn't do that daily work, but she's a resource in actual individual school sites having their own APAC. And we've seen that when schools have their own APAC, then they're also able to support families directly. And it's capacity building across the district. I know that the PAC also has a staff member. I don't believe that it's full-time. And then we have the Indian Education Program. They have an American Indian Parent Advisory Committee that I think is funded through federal dollars. I believe that and then we have DLAC, right, which is the District English Learner Advisory Committee. That's mandated by the state. So we have a full-time staff member there. But I think it is important for a committee to function in a way that makes sense, because some committees, like the Special Education Committee, Community Advisory Committee, they have, a chair and a vice chair, they have a secretary and things like that. Whereas the African American Parent Advisory Council shares leadership. And so I think in working with the community and working with our family coalition that does lead parent groups outside of the district, I think it's really important for whoever is on the committee to determine what the structure is like, how formal that structure is or informal that structure is, and how their, what their leadership model is, how often they meet, and all that stuff. What we did find, and this is a discussion that we had with families, is that unless the Special Education Community Advisory Committee is, I think, the only committee in our district that does not have dedicated funding to pay for one staff member. They do receive support from an outside organization, which is Support for Families. Support for Families provides kind of some operational support. They provide translation and space and things like that. But they are the only committee that is like 100% volunteer led as far as the leadership goes. I do think, though, that when you don't pay for staffing, you have dedicated staffing, and you don't resource that in some way, whether that comes from the district or whether that comes externally from like the city or from a grant funding, then basically you run the risk of the group only being able to happen if you have affluent or well-resourced families. And I think that is why we are calling for funding, but we also, in the resolution, it states there's a recognition that we are in a budget crisis. And so once it's approved, the goal of the resolution would be to find a way to resource it, whether it would be internally or in partnership with external organizations. But I do think it is very important to make a commitment to staffing at least one person to help do that outreach and to do that convening of the community in order to kind of build up the group and define it. And finally, I also want to say there would be budgetary impacts relating to signage, but those are technically mandated by state law. And so I don't think we should be considering if we're supposed to not be discriminating against students, and we're mandated to put up signage for students with disabilities. We're mandated, to have signage that's inclusive. And so, and our forms should also be inclusive. I don't think that should be under the lens of budgetary items when it comes to not discriminating. So I just wanted to put that out there. And I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have on just how it might look. But as I said, I think that's a part of the process, is that the community itself needs to decide who should be on the committee and how it organizes itself. Thanks. Alita Fisher, I don't know if Alita Fisher wanted to chime in on, because she knows a lot on just how, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I did just want to clarify.
Yeah, no, thank you. I was going to see, it looks like we have, please go ahead.
Sorry. The CAC is actually funded through the SELPA. So we do have a budget to pay for food, translation, interpretation, and childcare actually as well. And the district ombuds person, part of her job is to be our liaison. The CAC has in the past actually advocated to have a full-time district paid liaison, because honestly, for those of us in leadership, the amount of work that we do as non-paid volunteers is not sustainable. So thank you.
Thank you, Alita. So I just want to say, I mean, if you want to support a community advisory committee, it does need to have funding, and the resolution calls for the district to work with the city and, city partners to find that funding, whether it comes from the district entirely or whether that's in partnership with other agencies.
Thank you. I also see that there's a hand up from SFUSD PAC. If you want to add your thoughts.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Bogus. I really appreciate that. I really, really appreciate the robust conversation that's happening. I appreciate the questions around structure and how we are afforded more of a voice that has maybe teeth, for lack of a better word, in it, as well as there's funding concerns. And I think that the best way we can think through these issues is together, right? So talking to those of us who are already coordinating advisory committees when thinking about how this new one, the structure of it might look, as well as the people that are going to serve on it, as Commissioner Collins has said, and really thinking collectively how we can seek outside funding that doesn't rely on general unrestricted funds. We have a fundraising partner in the district, Spark. And I think the best way we could do it is, if we are going also collectively to funders and saying this is a very diverse group of family advocacy groups, how can we support it collectively? That's probably our strongest way to move forward. So I look forward to being part of those conversations along with my colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. President Lopez, I know I saw your hand up earlier. Did you want to add comments or questions?
Sorry. I just wanted to share my support for the resolution, and I appreciated people's comments. I see how profound this can be for a number of our parents who are here and for the students we all represent. So I look forward to its development.
Okay. If there's no other comments from board members, I will make a motion to send to the budget committee with a positive recommendation.
Commissioner, there was a public comment to be read into the record, but I'm having trouble finding it because I forwarded it. If you can give me a minute.
Ms.
Yeah.
Zinoff, I think that one is actually for the literacy resolution.
Okay. Okay. So then I can wait for that one. All right. I will find it. And then when we do the literacy, I'll read it.
Okay. And do we need to do a roll call vote on that motion? Do we have to have someone move it?
Oh, sorry, who seconded?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Alexander.
Is it unanimous or do I do it individually?
I think we have consensus to move forward. Yeah.
With a positive recommendation.
With a positive recommendation to the budget committee.
Okay.
Excuse me, this is Angie Miller. So I heard from the chair and Commissioner Alexander, I believe. So I'm sorry, Commissioner Lopez, did you agree with that?
Okay. It was a nonverbal thumbs up.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you for the clarification. And so with that, we will transition to the next item, and I will go to the staff who is leading the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Bogus. We are now going to have a presentation from staff to include myself, as well as our literacy team, Susie DuBois, Lisa Levin, and Katie Eller. And Deborah, I'm going to ask that you move the slide deck forward for us. Thank you, appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So good evening, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to share an analysis of the literacy resolution. In previous meetings, the C&I literacy team have outlined the structure and format of literacy in the district for elementary and secondary programs. We hope that information was helpful. And today, we will continue to take a deep dive into our literacy work, as well as the implications of the literacy resolution, in addition to the work that is already underway. Next slide. So our mission is binding. Every day we provide each and every student the quality instruction and equitable support required to thrive in the 21st century. We can all agree that literacy is critical to the success of all students, and we can also agree that we believe in quality instruction for the each and every. What I believe to also be true is that we're not there yet. We have a lot of work to do. We know we have not made this mission a reality. We know that we need to work strategically and in partnership with our parent groups, our staff, our teachers, our special education partners, as well as our labor partners to make this mission a reality. We believe that this mission should be true for the each and every. Next slide. The resolution calls out two major shifts. The first is a shift to structured literacy in Tier 1, which is what we call the first teach. And it also calls for the creation of a work group which would identify curriculum that is siloed and decontextualized in grades kindergarten through 5th. Shortly in this presentation, you will hear more about how we provide explicit and responsive instruction that is embedded in authentic reading and writing experiences that is also culturally relevant. You'll also hear about the process for acquiring curriculum as outlined by the board policy, as well as budget implications for the literacy resolution. Next slide. So there are three major shifts, three major impacts in the resolution. The first one is budget. We are currently in a budget shortfall, and CNI is currently being asked to reduce the budget by $9 million. And we will likely have additional cuts in the future. The question that we have is, how will we fund this resolution? As the budget office often tells us, we can do anything, but we can't do everything. So what do we prioritize? What is really important? In our second bullet, you see our existing literacy priorities. We currently hold the phonics, spelling, and word study implementation in all K-1 classrooms as critical work. We plan to continue this for this year, as well as into the next year, as highly significant for our team. We also believe that the resolution may well create duplicative work streams. As mentioned earlier, we have instructional materials adoption process that is already in play. We also have the work in CSES that targets our focal population of African-American students and their success in literacy. We also have a curriculum audit that will be analyzing, that is also underway, that will be analyzing our written and taught curriculum. We believe that all of those things will yield valuable information about our next steps and how we target literacy in classrooms. Next slide. So let's take a look at our budget implications. Next slide, Glover. Thank you. So this slide gives an overview of our recent financial investments that we have made in the area of phonics. And starting in 2018, you can see that we purchased supplemental phonics, spelling, and word study for all of our TK through 3rd grade classrooms. And we continue to purchase materials for new teachers and as we expand classrooms. Foundations, a structural literacy program, was purchased for all K-2 classrooms and piloted in 10 sites in 2017. And after that pilot, the decision was made to upscale purchasing across the board. Benchmark Phonetica was purchased in this past year for all of our K-5 Spanish biliteracy and immersion classrooms. And you can hear from a previous presentation how beneficial that has been for many of our students in various language spaces. The estimate for future phonics programs could be substantially more than what is projected currently on the screen, which is 1.6 million. This would need to take into account, this is only phonics and not an entire core curriculum. And it also would need to encompass professional development. I think it's also important to note that our current personnel, we have one TSA, teacher on special assignment, per elementary span. We have one for TK in 1st grade. We have one TSA for 2nd and 3rd grade and one TSA for 4th and 5th grade. This is 3 fewer positions than we had in the previous year. And we do not plan on filling those positions. We know that literacy is important for all students, but we also know how important the budget factors are. So let's please keep those in mind as part of the conversation as we move forward. Lisa, I'm going to hand it to you.
Thank you, Dr. Priestley. So we're going to go into existing literacy priorities, and myself and Katie Eller are going to take you through what is currently in place for our literacy practices. So one of the things that Dr. Priestley mentioned was that the resolution states a shift to structured literacy, which would require for us to purchase new curriculum. There are some sites that do have Foundations, which is a structured literacy program from the pilot, and then our TIFs also have Foundations to supplement their literacy intervention. Structured literacy program often teach phonics only. Not all structured literacy programs are comprehensive. So there's a strong focus on phonics instruction and decoding skills. And what the research points out, and studies thus far points out, is that if you're teaching these programs phonics and decoding, those are the skills that students kind of take on and actually are the skills that they're able to do. But often that's in isolation because the curriculum and those skills are decontextualized. What we know is that in order for students to have success in their reading achievement, we want to provide students both opportunities to learn skills in phonics and decoding and have access to rich text, literacy, literature, opportunities for reading and writing, engaging with each other and speaking and listening. So we want them to have opportunities for both and. Phonics and word study we know is imperative, and opportunities to read and write within the literacy classroom and growth. Next slide. Katie.
Hi, sorry about that. I'm unmuted now. So the resolution references the science of reading, which is based on the simple view of reading. This theory states that reading comprehension or skilled reading is the product of two separate but equally important skills: word recognition and language comprehension. Scarborough's rope, which is depicted on this slide, is a graphic representation of an extended description of the simple view of reading. These two categories of skills, word recognition and language comprehension, and their subcategories must be woven together in an increasingly strategic and automatic way in order for skilled reading to be achieved. As stated in the resolution, this leads to the 5 key elements of teaching reading: phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. We would also include additional theories that research identifies as critical in the success of reading, such as the need for active self-regulation, motivation, and engagement driven by socially and culturally relevant teaching. Next slide. The simple view of reading, or Scarborough's rope, is connected to our comprehensive approach to literacy, which is our methodology of literacy instruction. So you can see on the slide here, it lists the different components or methods which are taught daily and weekly, and the instructional focus for each of those components. Both of the strands and substrands of language comprehension and word recognition are an instructional focus in the different components, as you can see in this slide description. These components are designed to be taught across a day and across a week. And when these components are taught in a comprehensive way, weaving together both strands, they lead to skilled reading by students. You can also see that the 5 key elements of teaching reading stated in the resolution, and which include phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension, are included within these components and across multiple components. Therefore, when it states in the resolution that our current reading curriculum does not include the 5 key elements identified in the science of reading, and that our instruction teaches word solving on a whole language basis, this is inaccurate. We do recognize that in the past, some components have been emphasized over others. For instance, there's been an emphasis on reading workshop in the past years, which has led to the strand of language comprehension to be more attended to over word recognition. And this has created an imbalance. Therefore, we have been shifting the emphasis more to phonological awareness, phonics, and word study for the early grades to better address the word recognition skills so that our literacy instruction is in balance with equal attention on both strands of the reading road. Next slide.
So as Katie mentioned, we recognize that we did not have a balanced literacy instruction, and that maybe this one strand of the rope was being highlighted more than others. So in 2018 and 2019, as Dr. Priestley mentioned, we essentially purchased supplemental phonics and word study materials to address this imbalance. And all TK3 teachers received phonics and word study materials that included explicit lessons to be taught systematically for 20 minutes daily. During the past 3 years, and of course last year we had a pandemic, but we kept providing resources that aligned with our phonics and word study curriculum. We've provided initial and ongoing professional learning to teachers and instructional coaches to support their implementation. Since the rollout of these materials, we have continued to adapt and revise to strengthen the program. As we know, no curricular program, it just works on its own. We constantly have to revise and adapt things and reflect on how it's working for students. So we've made some revisions. We made revisions to the scope and sequence so it could be more systematic. We've added weekly ongoing assessments and skill review. We've developed daily foundational skills routines. And currently we're reviewing different decodable texts to accompany the scope and sequence so students have repetitive opportunities to practice the skills in continuous texts. During our deep dive into the research and what is the research saying about phonics instruction, we've come across many different meta studies that really call out that no one phonics program is necessarily better than the other and than another. That what's important is that there is really clear scope and sequence, that it's systematic, that there's ongoing assessments and opportunities for some differentiation. We understand that the explicit instruction is really critical, but what we know is that no one program can be responsive to the varied needs of all our readers. And any curricular program will need revisions, adaptations, and teacher expertise to effectively meet the needs of all our students. Next slide, please. So in Tier 2 literacy intervention, we know this is an area that the resolution also calls out, and there's a lot of concern over specifically leveled literacy intervention. And what we want to just kind of we've spoken on this in the past. LLI and is research-based, evidence-based. It's actually has gold standard studies over many years with large effect sizes and randomized control trials, which include populations of special education students and English learners. And there's strong evidence of a positive effect on overall reading achievement. Now we know that for our students in SFUSD, our interventions haven't worked for all students. And as we looked and reflected on what was working and wasn't working for level literacy intervention, we knew that we needed to address the alphabetics. And so in 2018, we provided all our 64 RTIFs in the district, our literacy intervention teachers in the districts, foundations materials, and structured literacy professional development. And we continue to do that. In addition, another thing the resolution calls out is the need for screeners. Currently, we do have screeners. We have universal screeners for foundational skills. We have additional screeners for phonological processing. And then we have our reading assessments that measure accuracy, fluency, and comprehension growth. For Tier 3 SPED, thank you. I wasn't sure if we were speaking on that or not. Thank you. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, and we've stated, like, we know we have much improvement. We want all students to be successful in reading, and we're not there yet. So we have a few to many different steps in motion to improve instruction. A couple that I want to highlight is our dyslexia screening pilot with UCSF. I also want to highlight our professional development we're offering to all K-2 educators in early literacy and foundational skills, and a focus on phonics, spelling, word study, and foundational skills overall. Like, that is our focus as a team, internal team, with our literacy coaches and with our teachers. Next slide.
Thanks, Lisa and Katie. The final implication we'd like to raise is the concern we have about this resolution duplicating work. Bless you, Jill.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Little sneeze relief. Let me start over. So we're concerned about some of the components of this resolution producing some duplicative work streams. So we've all talked tonight, and many of the commissioners present have already stated this, that as we're heading into this tight fiscal situation, it's imperative that we reduce any overlapping work streams and redundancies and use our already existing structures and engagement strategies and board mandated policies and procedures that are already in place. Next slide, please. Okay. There are 2 work streams already underway that reflect some of the components asked for in this resolution, CSACE and our elementary ELA curriculum audit. So part of the CSACE plan actually requires the district to convene a literacy summit. And many of the expectations required by CSACE are similar to those being called for in this resolution. Similarly, CNI has a literacy curriculum audit underway in partnership with TNTP, who are examining the written curriculum, so the instructional materials and assessments that have been purchased or provided or that are teacher developed, the taught curriculum, so curriculum that is actually in practice in classrooms that students gain access to content through, and the learned curriculum, which is the ways in which assignments ask students to demonstrate their learning and to engage with the content. So this work is happening now, and results are expected in late spring 2022. Next slide, please. So over the past few weeks, we've been meeting with a number of the writers of this resolution. And through these conversations, we have come to understand that at its heart is a desire to have a seat at the table for the purchasing of instructional materials and decisions about screeners and assessments and training. We agree that these decisions are best made collectively, and so does the board. We have 2 existing board policies that direct the superintendent or designee to establish an instructional materials review committee, to involve teachers on that committee in a substantial manner, and to encourage parents and community members to participate, as well as administrators and other staff who have subject matter expertise. And so although there are no major purchases for TK5 literacy planned for the near future, should that funding someday be allotted, staff will certainly convene a committee as required to do so by these board policies. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in closing, we just want to lift up some of the highlights of the intensive work that's been happening over the past 3 years. Those are listed here on the left-hand side of this slide. And to specifically name some of the next steps we will be taking as listed on the right. We absolutely recognize that the work that must be done to better address the literacy needs of all students. We have a significant amount of work ahead of us, much of which is already in motion, as mentioned earlier. And we look forward to doing so collectively and in collaboration with gen ed classroom teachers, special education teachers, site leaders, literacy coaches and artists, parents and community members, as well as our research partners at UCSF. But this resolution raises a number of questions for us in regard to its feasibility, its practicality at this time. It duplicates a number of our pre-existing work streams. It competes with some of our already existing priorities, and it puts us in a challenging budget situation. Thank you so much for your time. We look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation, staff. I wanted to give an opportunity for the authors of the resolution to speak before we go to public comment. And I believe there's also some members of the public who provided some input and direction to the resolution as well, who will give opportunity to speak after the authors in the same moment, and we'll go to public comment.
Thank you.
Oh, wait a second. There is a hand raised. Let's make sure that we aren't breaking the law.
Yes, I just wanted to make it clear that members of the public would have to speak during the public comment time and have the same amount of time to speak as any other member of the public. So the board member authors can speak before public comment, but anyone else would speak during public comment.
Okay, I guess my question is, they were asked to present some information about the resolution that they co-authored, and they were originally invited to participate. And I was told just now during the meeting that they were informed just today that they were told that they were not allowed to present. Is that true?
I don't know what was told before right now, but I do know that our agenda does not have other members or committees, advisory committees listed on the agenda.
This isn't an advisory committee, these are co-authors. So Dr. Priestley.
There's no co-author listed other than yourself.
They cannot officially author it as they are not board members, but
that's right.
They were asked by us, President Lopez and I, to help prepare a presentation. And I was informed during the meeting that they were, and I was under the impression that they would be able to do that. And I was also informed that Dr. Priestley told them that they were not able to do that today. Is that correct, Dr. Priestley?
I can address that if you don't mind, Dr. Priestley, because I definitely think that the arrow's on my part and what was instructed from me in the conversations that I had with staff and a lack of follow-up. Kind of around updating our agenda to kind of include additional presenters. And so I think just because of that, we won't be able to kind of have them speak now, but having
I guess I just wanted an answer to my question. So you made the decision, or did Dr. Priestley make that decision?
So it was made clear to me from kind of our legal counsel that the presentation that was prepared, as well as I wasn't aware of the being able to speak right now.
Totally fine. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And so when were you informed of that? Just so
I
I'm
was
clear on
informed that I didn't inform them and they didn't include the agenda today was when I was made aware.
You learned about it today?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just noticing a pattern. I just want to let you know. I'd like to see the Brown Act like legal language that states that, I mean, I'd love to see it just so that we can all be clear that we need to list who's presenting a meeting, if that needs to be loaded into board docs. My understanding is that we need to let the public know what we're discussing, and we need to give them enough information for them to show up and, you know, if they want to make a comment, if they want to inform our dialogue. And what we have done is we've posted that we are going to be discussing this resolution. We've posted the resolution. And I'll tell you, you know, Commissioner Bogus, just so you're informed, when I first joined the board, staff regularly uploaded presentations the day of a presentation, and sometimes even like right before a meeting. And I was asking Esther to get it so that we could even review it. And if you look back, I mean, when I joined, there's multiple times where commissioners were asking to get staff to prepare presentations so that we'd have time to review them over the weekend. And we even got pushback from some departments who said that that wasn't enough time for them. They wanted to wait until the day of to post presentations. So it's not my understanding that we have to post a full presentation in order for us to meet Brown Act requirements. It is my understanding with, like, say, the Lowell resolution, that we need to provide enough information in how we post it that people understand what the topic is that we're going to be discussing. And by posting a resolution, people are aware we're going to be talking about a literacy resolution. But I have seen even board members bring items to the board that then get posted after the fact. And sometimes staff has also brought information after the fact that's posted because it's brought up in discussion. So I just want clarity. And I was just wondering if our legal staff could just clarify what the rules are on, on board Brown Act, because it seems to be coming up a lot.
So that may be in the past that you've seen things thrown on the agenda at the last minute. We absolutely don't want to replicate those procedures. So I'm sure a lot of things happened in the past, but we don't want to continue that because we put the, your current action at risk of being invalidated if we repeat those. So that's why we're trying to be very careful and very clear with the public of what's going to happen.
Okay, and so are you saying that going forward, every single presentation that ever gets considered in a board meeting, the Brown Act requires that any document that's discussed or any presentation that's discussed must be posted at the same time that the agenda item is posted as well?
Not necessarily, I'm not talking about necessarily the presentation, but if you're having people present, which is not our usual practice, we have board members present or staff present before public comment. So if we're elevating members of the public to speak, then we should, it is a basic principle of fairness that we let the public know.
But is that in the Brown Act? Is that in the Brown Act?
It is in the Brown Act that we have to let the public know what is going to happen.
Who is going to be speaking? Is that in the Brown Act? The presenter, do we need to list the presenter? Is that in the Brown Act?
I don't know, it doesn't say specifically name all the presenters, but it has been our practice as a board to have the board present and staff present. So if we're going to do something different, that's not what the public is expecting.
Ms. Miller, I just want to let you know, our chief academic officer worked with me in the past, and we've had like fishbowl presentations on this very committee just 1 year ago. And we've had multiple community members participate as panelists, and it was determined like on the day of the meeting based on who was able to participate. So it is not actually a board practice. We've done things differently in the past. And so it's unusual for me to hear that. And just to say, if we're going to do something one way, that's fine. We should be really clear about it. But it is actually not like a set practice, because I've seen meetings handled in many different ways over the past 2 years. So I just wanted to put that on the record and say that I'm just, I'm surprised and I'm a little disappointed that that legal staff is informing community members who've worked really hard to support our district in just, even just presenting this question. I think it's an important question in terms of how we deal with literacy. I think it's really unfortunate that, and frankly, a little disrespectful that these things are coming up the day of a presentation when I think this has been in discussion, I think, last week. So in the future, it would be great if we could we could have these conversations, I think, prior to the meeting and make sure that all the presenters are fully informed.
Absolutely. And if we get the information in advance, then we can give the advice in advance. It's up to the chair. I've given the advice.
I appreciate that.
President Lopez, do you have a comment regarding this current conversation?
Yes, I do. Just to actually speak to that, because we were under the impression last week that the presenters in question were on the agenda. So I think that's why there's a little bit of mistrust in some way that this was proceeding and then it shifted at the last minute. And I understand that there are various.
So can I ask President Lopez, did you specifically, I mean, you specifically worked with Ms. Priestley and informed her that there would be presenters at this meeting, right? And that was my understanding.
We are in the same email.
Yeah, so then we did know who the presenters would be. And so that's just another question for me as to why, if that's a new requirement from our legal counsel, why they weren't posted on the original notice.
So it might be helpful at this point if I can clarify. So Commissioner Collins, I appreciate the question. Our team has been in communication with the other co-authors, and we've had some meetings. So Alita Fisher, I think the folks that you would see on Brittany O'Connor, Megan Kaluza. So we have been in various meetings. And I always, as you know, and working with you, we would always meet prior to the meeting to determine the agenda and what would be coming forward. And I also do that with Commissioner Bogus. And I do know Commissioner Bogus wanted to give voice to folks at the table, to include the commissioners, our staff, as well as the co-authors. And so in meeting with the co-authors, we talked about, I said, we'll try to create an opportunity for you to be present at the table, being elevated to panelists specifically. And so that was coming up in the middle of last week. And so we had that meeting. And so I found out earlier today, after documents had been presented and we had put the agenda up on Thursday, the agenda went up on Thursday, documents were attached on Friday morning that our team was presenting. And then earlier today, I did find out that if it had not been pre-agendized as listed on the documents, that there would not be an opportunity for there to be folks who were in public comment to be elevated. So that was some information that was new. And I want to reiterate, we always trying to do better and we want to follow our best practice. And so that was something that came to light earlier today. We wanted to create voice. Commissioner Bogus made it clear he wanted to make sure folks had voice, and we want to make sure everyone still has voice. We weren't just able to do that in the form of a presentation because it had been pre-agendized.
I'm sorry, I'm just having a real hard time right now because we have like parent advisory councils, like they regularly present to us, and there are times when we actually invite them to comment. And like I've seen regular board meetings where we've had discussions and then thought, gee, it would be really helpful to have this information, and then actually invited a member of the community to come up and actually become a panelist to inform our discussion. And that's never been agendized in advance. We don't list individual names of parent advisory council members for the APAC or the SPEDCAC. Like it's just, I mean, I'm just confused because and I'd love to hear from other commissioners about this, just so that we have clarification going forward.
Commissioner Alexander, do you want to add your voice to this dialogue?
Yeah, I guess I'm also confused if Alita Fisher and Megan Kaluza and Brittany O'Connor, who are all members of the SFUSD community, two are staff, another's the chair of an advisory committee, like, and if they had a role in writing the resolution, isn't it more transparent to the public to allow them to present and acknowledge that rather than pretending that they're just members of the public like everyone else? Like it also almost feels deceptive to me to suggest, like if they've been in discussions with other staff, right, which is, it actually feels more transparent to allow them to present than to not do so. It feels strange to me to sort of pretend that they're just like any other member of the public when they actually were an active role in drafting this. I would love to hear from them, but I don't know. I mean, again, I don't understand. I guess I'm confused about the legal argument too, because I've also seen, as other commissioners have said, I've seen those things happen too. So I don't understand the Brown Act concern, but maybe.
I'd like to see the language in the Brown Act that requires it personally.
So what I think will be helpful is for if if commissioners okay with us kind of having like this to be kind of a resting spot for this conversation and for this to be something for us to come back to. And I think personally, I just want to follow up with legal counsel about kind of the proper procedure for us to kind of have moving forward, to kind of have the green light from you to kind of have different voices who aren't elected commissioners or district staff to be a part of the presentation process. I think that's something that's really important for me, and just trying to figure out how we ensure that we are being balanced in the amount of space that we're giving for positive support and negative support, and not kind of being unfairly balanced towards one side in the way we're handling things, but still kind of lifting up the voices of community that kind of make things possible. Before we go to public comment, I do just want to see if there's any additional comment from our legal counsel, and maybe Commissioner Collins, do you want to sneak one more in before we get closing comments for our legal counsel?
I'd love to get comments from legal counsel. I guess my question is, I think my understanding was, I mean, this is also, it's like the QT pack. I mean, it was a collaborative resolution drafted with, you know, actual staff members in our schools and a parent leader. And so I feel like my understanding moving up to until just, 20 minutes ago was that they would be able to share their thoughts about the work and the importance of the resolution and why certain things were included and why others were not. And I almost feel like I can't have this dialogue because, we're going to be considering whether to advance this with a recommendation, positive or negative. And I feel like they've effectively been relegated to they've been deplatformed. And so and this is an open question, I'm open to hearing from some of the contributors to the resolution who are here in the panel, or not on the panel that have been depaneled, and also from my co-author, President Lopez. I mean, is this something we should take up in January and do it right? Because I feel like I don't want to, this isn't the way that this is a community-based resolution. I want to have a community-based conversation. I want to hear all voices. I love to hear dialogue, and I love to hear, just different perspectives. And I feel like that can't happen at this point now because of kind of how this has kind of come about. So I'm open to hearing your thoughts, Commissioner Bogus, and also President Lopez. I'm also interested in hearing your thoughts as well.
I think I'm going to ask commissioners to save their thoughts until after we get through public comment, but did want to give our legal counsel a chance to just, if there's any additional thoughts or comments.
I'm suggesting that we don't vote on this today, that we move this and we move it to another, a January meeting where we can allow the folks who are planning to present the full opportunity to present. That's what I'm suggesting, is that we don't go through the regular motions, because this isn't, I don't think this is right, personally. I'm not a committee member. I've been removed from committees, so I don't have a voice. And so but I'm allowed to say stuff as a board member. I would, I guess, ask for the official committee members, is this something that you feel would be fair to actively vote on when this process feels like it's been kind of interrupted? So that's an open question that I would ask of you, and specifically my co-author, who is an official member of this body, as well as I think it would be interesting to hear from Alita Fisher and other members of the community that helped to author this resolution, what their thoughts are.
No, I appreciate that. I think I would like clarity if we can have that conversation before we take public comment on the items. I think just procedurally, we would have to have public comment and then have us have a discussion about the actions we want to take next. Okay, if that feels good for folks, for us to move forward, then why don't we move forward into public comment? And what I will do is we'll give 3 minutes for public comment for the commenters, and we'll take as many people kind of as we have. And we'll start that process now.
Okay, if you'd like to speak to this item, please raise your hand. And can I have that translated in Spanish and Chinese, please?
Buenas noches. Por favor, levante su mano si desea añadir un comentario público. Gracias.
Liên quan đến tàu chủ đề câu hỏi một bé thầy có đi có muốn không phải kết quả bé thì nghe câu sau là nguyện cả.
Okay. Cynthia?
Yes, hi, thank you so much. Good evening, commissioners, Dr. Priestley, and the ELA folks who are here. My name is Cynthia Lasden. I am a National Board Certified teacher, and I'm a literacy coach, and I've been in SFUSD for 25 years. I want to thank Dr. Priestley and the ELA team, the leadership, for that really comprehensive presentation. I'm going to speak in opposition to the reso that's on the table because I believe it wrongly states that in SFUSD, we have no phonics and phonemic awareness program. Second, that we have no culturally relevant curriculum. And thirdly, that we have no professional development in these areas. And our team went into the details on this, but as a literacy coach, I know this is simply not true. Firstly, we have the Fountas and Pinnell Phonics Spelling and Word Study. That's our district adopted program for K-3. We're in our 4th year of implementation. And more so than ever, we're working on implementing it to fidelity. We spend time every month as literacy coaches working on aligning our program, analyzing student data, looking at what this looks like in the classroom, and how we're coaching teachers to implement this program at the sites. Secondly, with regards to culturally relevant curriculum, we are integrating the pursuits of Dr. Goldie Muhammad across our K-5 ELA curriculum, and I think middle school and probably above. That would be identity, criticality, knowledge, skills, and joy. And you can see it in the books that we're reading in the classroom. You can see it in the shift in the questions that we're bringing to the curriculum. Just look at the spirals on the ELA landing page that our really great ELA team has developed. So that is present. And the last point is that we do have professional development. You already heard from our leadership, but as a coach in the district, our network has critical and analytical PDs every month. We have clinics where we actually put these things into practice. And we're honing our phonics and phonemic awareness instruction at our sites. And you also heard that the ELA department provides PD to teachers during our Wednesday releases. And that includes for our K2 teachers, a phonics and phonemic awareness component. This reso feels really confused. So much of this work is already in action, and it feels really like it's coming from a deficit model. So because the deficits are at the core of this reso, I think that all needs to be corrected before any of the commissioners move this forward. So I strongly urge you to not move this resolution forward in the way that it stands right now. I also wanted to add no cuts to the classroom or to MTSS because that's where this important work is happening. Thank you, Matt Alexander.
Commissioner, Jill's going to read an email into the statement for public comment. Is that okay?
Please do. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Jill.
Sorry. Now I think I have my mic back on. Sorry about that earlier. Here's the comment. My name is Lindsay Hatfield. I have been a classroom teacher, reading intervention teacher, and a site-based literacy coach at 3 separate SFUSD elementary schools, and am currently working as a TSA in elementary English language arts. I have a master's in language and literacy from San Francisco State and continue in partnership with SFSU and USF. On top of my multiple subject credential, I also have a reading specialist credential. Over the past 25 years, I have seen many changes in the curriculum and methodologies used to teach reading in elementary school. Over the past 10 years, I have watched SFUSD proactively identify and respond to student data and research in the field of early literacy learning. When learning about this proposed resolution, I was surprised to find that 1, a resolution proposes a return to methods and curricular resources similar to those employed during No Child Left Behind, which proved to be extremely expensive, ineffective, and fell short of many of its intended outcomes. The resolution references culturally responsive teaching and resources. In collaboration with both Dr. Zaretta Hammond and Dr. Goldie Mohammed, it has been clearly stated that any curriculum needs to be revised to match the students and community in any given classroom and school community. SFUSD has partnered with experts on the front lines of culturally responsive teaching and has proactively offered curricular revisions to support teachers in making decisions for the students in their classrooms. This proposal is number 3. This proposal is in direct contrast to the research-based partnership pilots and curricular adoptions and the money that has already been spent on early literacy in SFUSD over the past 3 to 5 years. Effective implementation takes time. Research has shown that teachers need at least 3 full days of professional development and ongoing support to understand and use resources effectively. And with that level of support, studies have pinpointed that a minimum of 3 to 5 years is needed for the curriculum in place to achieve the desired results. SFUSD communities of teaching and learning are nearing the stage where they feel comfortable adapting the curriculum and utilizing resources to respond to the diverse needs of their students. I would propose that the money this resolution hopes to spend on curriculum and corresponding training be instead invested into teachers' deeper understanding of their students' needs and in site-based partnerships, including classroom teachers, RSP teachers, RTIFs, and literacy coaches, to more effectively utilize the research-based adoptions and methodologies that SFUSD has already invested in.
Kiki?
Yes, I would like to make a comment. I have been a teacher of adult ESL, where I've been using, phonics quite successfully. But I have been working, along with others on this literacy resolution. I have to say, I am completely losing complete confidence in this district. It feels like this was a very one-sided approach this evening. It has been, clear that they didn't want to hear the other side. They didn't want to hear additional, information. And I find it completely unbelievable. From the very first slide where you say for each and every day, we provide a 21st century education. This is clearly not the case. When 50% of the students in this district cannot read at grade level. You have students in schools like Carver and so forth, where 8% are reading at their grade level. Why are these even schools? If you have been paying any attention, you would have noted that just over this weekend, the new chancellor of the New York City School District has completely come out against so-called balanced literacy. And they are taking everyone to task on this. But why is it that here, this district and these people, including Ms. Priestley, seem to be ultra defensive and try to shore up their own failings in this respect? Frankly, if I were a teacher in the district, I don't know what I would do. It's very, very disheartening, and it's very disheartening to have all the work that people on this literacy committee have done to be completely shoved aside. Thank you.
Darcy?
Hello, my name's Darcy Chan Blackburn. I am a first grade teacher at Sheridan Elementary School. I also am not in support of this resolution as it stands. There is more that needs to be done. I don't know that we need to buy a new curriculum. However, the current F&P phonics curriculum is not sufficient for our students. It requires a lot of cutting and sorting, which actually takes away from the phonics process that they need to learn. Otherwise, or if the teacher does all the cutting for the children, that takes away a lot of preparation time. And there are many more hands-on activities out there that teachers can use to teach letter sounds and teach reading. We also absolutely must have decodable text for our students who particularly are at the introductory levels of reading. We have to shift away from using just the F and P levels and the assessments to determine whether a student is reading at grade level, in grade level expectation. What's happened in particularly kids leaving kindergarten who aren't at level D as established, parents, families, children are basically told they're not succeeding because they haven't reached that level. But if you look at the F and P levels of A, B, C, and D, they are heavily reliant on looking at the picture to read the word, highly patterned sentence frames for the students to use to pick up the words that are unknown, and not much practice with actually decoding the letters or using letter knowledge. So it is really essential that we switch to decodable text for our younger students, our earlier reading students, so that they can actually use the letter knowledge they know to read the words. Decodable texts allow for enough for the words to be truly readable to the students who know the letter sounds. We also need a specific sequence for all of us to follow in order what order letter sounds we teach, because you don't teach from A to Z, because children don't need all 26 letter sounds to start reading. If you teach M, S, C, T, P, and A, there are a whole lot of words that they could read at that point. So we need either C&I, or we use foundations, or we use something that's there that has a specific sequence for letter sound order. And then also for activities for us that include hands-on, that don't require a lot of preparation. There are a lot of them. And then once again, having the decodable text. It's really important that our children feel success. And if we keep going with F and P levels, they don't feel success because if they don't know the name of that word, because they're a language learner, or they have, the various reasons, they are being told they're not succeeding. Thank you.
Rebecca?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Fedorko. I'm a special education teacher at Ccr Elementary School. And I just want to really take a moment to appreciate Commissioners Lopez, Bogus, Collins, and Alexander, because I am one of the teachers who's worked tirelessly on this. And I felt absurdly disrespected by every single member of the SFUSD staff that presented tonight. What I heard were people telling the public what our mission was behind the resolution without my input and without our input. I really was very upset to hear people say this was their intention when we haven't gotten the chance to represent our intention. And I apologize, my comment is all over the place because I'm ridiculously upset. After looking at the slides that were presented today, I'm so worried about the internal leadership of this district because once again, I see significantly purposefully misleading information. To hear someone state that structured literacy programs only teach phonics is a flat out lie. I'm aghast that people feel comfortable making these statements. What I saw was a really defensive presentation that is committed to teaching reading from a debunked theory of whole language rebranded as comprehensive literacy. And it's interesting to hear people reference Zaretta Hammond and Goldie Muhammad when both of these individuals have come out against balanced literacy. They have, I think Goldie Muhammad tweeted about it today. So it's really, I don't want us to keep elevating these voices as if they are defending the practices we are using, because I believe Zaretta Hammond doesn't want to work with our district because of some of the practices we use. And it was really tough to see descriptions of ELA blocks that don't exist. I don't see those at tier 1 as a teacher in the classroom. I see a lot of buzzwords in this presentation without accurate explanation, evidence, or articulation of what it means. I saw universal screener listed under tier 2, which by its very nature is not universal. And worst, what I did not see were my students. I did not see the children that I work with that struggle every day with reading because of the lack of instruction that they have received. If we are truly on the right path, then why aren't you really shouting loud and proud about the statistics in our district? If we're so proud of comprehensive literacy, then show me the data where student literacy rates are above 80% that utilizes this kind of instruction. You can't show me that because they don't exist. I'm begging leadership to focus on evidence on what district, cities, states like Mississippi and countries like the United Kingdom around the globe are doing in lifting students up and empowering them by giving them the greatest gift we can give them as educators. Please focus on our kids. Don't focus on what curriculum you guys like the best.
Hava?
Yeah, okay. I'm a parent of a struggling reader. And I've started this journey. My son is in 5th grade in kindergarten, observing struggles. I have learned more things as I've gone along. Here's what I want to say. I believe in collaboration. I believe in this district. I believe in the human beings and teachers who have good hearts. But what I have seen tonight has upset me to my core. Ms. Levin, you said things that are not accurate. I just want to make that clear. They're not accurate, and what I'm advocating for as a parent to change not only my son's life, but his peers. It's not just phonics. LLI is not evidence-based research. There's so many issues with FNP. If and when I was told that my son was on level D, these educators did not know what that meant. They cannot tell me what that meant. They did not have the tools to help my son. The assessments for FNP do not highlight what is going on with my son. You do not have a robust, explicit instruction for K1 and phonics and phonemic awareness, because if you did, my son would be okay. So I am begging you, please do better. And I'm very, very upset that the other side did not have a chance to present. When or if this is passed, please bring forth parents who are of strugglers, readers. They need a voice. They have been there. I have been there every day with my child, trying to help him in any capacity, working in collaborations with my son's teachers. I have no ill will. I love my son's teachers, okay? But there is something wrong in this district. And if you don't start acknowledging that and continue on this path where you're going to put a little patch or talk about random things that don't exist, and if you don't do better now, you're going to lose another generation. We live in poverty. My son's education is his ticket out. I care about it because of that, and because of his social emotional well-being, which is deteriorating as we speak. Do better. Ms. Priestley, I have seen you in your heart, and it was fantastic. Please, some of these other directions that things are going is breaking my heart. I know that with your leadership and collaboration, we can move forward, but we have to do better than what I saw tonight. Thank you.
Christina?
Please mute yourself if you are no longer speaking, especially if you're still a panelist.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christina Scher. I'm the vice chair of the CAC, and literacy has been a focus for us. I haven't been deeply involved in the crafting of the literacy resolution, but I've been watching it with like so much interest and hope. It is pretty disappointing. It just seems loud and clear to me that the voices from the literacy committee and I'm probably saying it wrong, I forget what it's called, the literacy something. They're just not being allowed to speak. It's not fair. And I want to point out that other districts, even if we spent our money on FNP and we spent $8 million, it's not too late. Other districts are returning their curriculum. We can take that money, we can spend it in a different direction that will get us different results. I really loved all the people who spoke up for the need for decodable texts. Absolutely. And in the district presentation, they mentioned like that that we want our students to have like the rich literature experience, but I just think it's meaningless until they can actually decode. And that time will come if they learn to decode. And I want to mention some things because I know so many of you are teachers that I see in, I saw in my daughter's first grade classroom that I don't think should be there. They're using these tactics like eagle eye, which means look at the picture and try to tell what the words say. And Skippy the frog, like if a word is hard, read to the end of the sentence and then try to guess what should go there. What could that word be? But that's not reading, that's guessing. Flippy Dolphin encourages you to try the short vowel sound. And if that doesn't seem like a word you know, try the long vowel sound. But that's not reading. There's rules for all of this. I mean, there's exceptions too, but there's rules that will get you through it in a way where you can be confident in what you're reading. And I just don't want to see those methods used anymore. Those are definitely being used right now in classrooms. And I can't tell if I'm out of time. Yeah, I want to thank everyone who spoke up, that it really feels like a fast one is being pulled here. And I know that if you spent so much money for your professional education and you were taught to educate a certain way, it's hard to let that go. And I think that's what's happening here. And I admire your intentions, but I think it doesn't look like, I'm worried that we're not going in the right direction.
Karen?
Thank you.
Karen?
Hi, yes, my name is Karen Osher and I'm a literacy coach at Sheridan Elementary. I've been teaching the school district for over 25 years and I've seen the pendulum swing related to the reading wars before. The all or nothing language of those who seek to throw out the current program is incredibly disheartening and short-sighted. I hope we do not make the mistake of throwing out an approach to literacy which has the greatest chance of tapping into student culture, intellect, agency, and joy. Having a one-size-fits-all program has never shown support for all learners. Let us rather take the best of the research to adjust where needed, including resources and corresponding professional development, as has already been begun in this year. I'm very proud of how teachers at Sheridan have taken on this learning while continuing to teach the rigorous and high-level reading strategies and structures that are included in the comprehensive approach to literacy. No one disagrees that our understanding of how foundational skills are taught needs to be renewed with a critical focus, but we need our students to be more than word readers. We all want critical, literate, and joyful citizens. Thank you.
Gina. Gina?
At Bryant Elementary, and I'm speaking in opposition to the resolution. I want to reiterate what's already been said about the shifts that are already happening in our approach to reading and phonics instruction over the past several years, including the adoption of a district-wide phonics curriculum and the addition of multiple other routines to support a variety of early literacy skills. This year, every single literacy coach meeting has been dedicated to evaluating concerns brought up by proponents of structured literacy in order to determine what shifts need to be made in our instruction. But reading the board resolution, you would have no idea that any of this work is already happening. The assertions made about our curriculum are not true, including the claim that we teach word solving on a whole language basis. The misinformation in this resolution contributes to a national debate that is incredibly polarized, filled with either or thinking and a lack of nuance that does not serve our students' best interests and is misleading. Instead of passing resolutions that contribute to this divisiveness, we should be engaging in a conversation about what's already being done and what is really needed. And what's not needed is a new curriculum. There is no one curriculum that contains everything that students need. This year at Bryant, we are implementing a more structured approach to phonics, and there's a lot that I like, but there's also a lot missing. We're already realizing we need to supplement with additional phonological awareness routines, and it's essential that we have the other components so that students experience choice and agency in their learning and so that they transfer their new skills in meaningful, authentic contexts. The resolution speaks about wanting culturally relevant and responsive resources. That's not going to come from adopting a structured literacy curriculum. It is found in the work the ELA department is already doing in collaboration with Dr. Goldie Mohammed. We all know that there's a lot more work to be done, and that's what I heard when I listened to the presentation from the team from the district, is all of the work that's already in progress. It's not for a lack of curriculum or guidance on a central level. I can show you all the schedules and the pacing guides, all of which incorporate phonics and phonological awareness on a daily basis. If it's not happening in some classrooms, then it comes down to increased teacher training, support, and professional development. Let's invest in those things instead of succumbing to either or thinking and throwing out all the amazing things that are already happening in classrooms across the district. Thank you.
Sarah?
Hi, good evening. Thanks so much for listening to all of us commissioners, and thank you, Katie and Lisa and Susie, for the presentation. I want to commend Dr. Priestley and her team for being brave enough to engage in this anti-racist work of not just following through on what every other district is doing, and instead continuing to look deeply at what we are currently doing with our comprehensive approach to literacy, because I think that that is the place to start. And so I really want to commend you all on beginning that work, on admitting that we have a curriculum and that we have started to use and that we're analyzing it more. A couple of the things in the resolution that I wanted to speak to, there are a number of statements around us having a lack of effective literacy curriculum that I think that is just, and commissioners, you received my letter regarding this, that's just untrue. Having been in the school district for 20 years, I have had the opportunity to go through Houghton Mifflin and watch all of our children, specifically our Black and Latinx children, get to start to have books where they get to see themselves, and then they start to learn about digraphs, and their whole world is opened up, and it's completely different from all of the structured literacy programs and curriculums that they have had access to before. And so I just want to name that what we have in place and are continuing to work on is working for so many of our kids. One of the measures in the resolution was the SBAC, and the SBAC just simply isn't a way to analyze reading. And so the numbers that we're looking at across the state and the country are using SBAC, and that is not a way to look at deep and comprehensive reading. Another thing that was stated was that we needed to identify specific materials to implement systemic change. You've listened to many of my other literacy coach colleagues talk about how we should not adopt a structured literacy program. We know that they simply don't work, especially for our Black and Latinx students who don't get to see themselves in the text, the books that we are using. And so again, I am in agreement with everyone else who has said that we don't want to adopt a new curriculum. And then I think most importantly, with this resolution that we have heard from both sides, if you'd like to call it, is that there haven't been all of the voices at the table. Myself and the other literacy coaches and the ELA department has not been at the table by and large for this literacy resolution. And so I would recommend that you not move forward with the resolution and instead continue to have a group of folks who are actually doing a deep analysis like the ELA department has started, where there's a curriculum audit and looking at areas that are successful and areas where we need to grow. Thank you.
Will?
Hi, my name is Will Patterson, and I'm a former resource specialist with San Francisco Unified School District. I now do private practice, tutoring students using structured literacy, and it's quite successful. Most of the students that I work with are students who've had trouble in a public school system, and most of them come from schools that have used FNP when they were having their trouble. The FNP program, when I worked as a resource specialist in SFUSD, led to a lot of the students going through to the 3rd or 4th grade before they would get a special education services. And then the way special education works is that they start off with sort of what is a minimum amount of minutes of service, usually 90 minutes, maybe 120 per week for remediation, which is just not enough to remediate a student who's already 3 grade levels behind. Then the special education department did get a new series, a new curriculum that was supposed to be useful for their students, which the name is escaping me right now, but I know that ELA also did a Wilson program. And the Wilson program has been just minimally funded compared to what's been going on with F&P or Lucy Calkins workshops. So our students who are struggling the most, who are the farthest behind in literacy, are getting the fewest resources and the fewest number of minutes of service to help remediate their reading struggles. And what needs to happen is a curriculum that goes into the kindergarten and first grade classrooms that just from the beginning teaches students the way they need to be taught so that they can learn, including dyslexic students. And what you see in the difference between these two approaches is that one approach works for about 60% of students, and another approach works for about 95 to 99% of students. And the one we've chosen to use is the one that works for 60% of students. And this is the reason why so many school districts around the country are gradually making the change to structured literacy, is because it works for more students. And structured literacy is the foundation that allows students to access all those books about identity. You know, you can't go off and read on your own about the things that interest you until you can read the words on the page. And so many of the students that I worked with were coming into special ed in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade at an F&P level F. Okay, that's like kindergarten and 1st grade level. And the systems are not in place to help those kids out. Like the screeners that we have are identifying 1 or 2 kids in a kindergarten class, in a kindergarten grade level. That's 2 or 3 classes of kindergarten, only identifying 1 to 2 students. That's not an effective screener. The screeners need to be improved a lot. And I think what happened tonight with the presentation was really unfortunate. They should have been allowed to present. I think they need to be allowed to present in January. And when we go to the budget committee, we want to see like dollars and cents really talked about for each of these programs. How much are we spending on F&P? How much are we spending on Lucy Calkins? What's it costing the district, so that we know what it would cost to make a change when the time comes. Thanks.
Missy?
Hello, good evening. My name is Missy Cadle, and I'm the reading specialist at Francis Scott Key Elementary. While we all agree that reading is critical to lifelong success, the resolution as written should not be our guide. It lacks specificity on the programs currently in place. It cherry picks from research and recommends funding new curricula without determining efficacy of our currently adopted programs. Many references are made to the science of reading as articulated by the National Reading Panel in 2000. However, not mentioned in this resolution is the recommendation by the same National Reading Panel that states, it will be critical to determine the ways in which systematic phonics instruction can be incorporated and integrated in complete and balanced programs of reading instruction. This is what we have in place. The authors cite a study from 2004 in Richmond, Virginia, where successes were seen after adopting structured literacy programs. What's left out is that the scores began dropping in 2010 and have continued to drop every year since. I'm not sure that's a trend we should model. This resolution was written without input from the ELA department, whose decades of knowledge, education, and experience could have helped draft a more informed, more accurate, and more reliable roadmap towards success. Going forward, I hope that a new draft can be constructed in partnership with these educators and staff. Thank you.
Nikki?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this space. As an SFUSD educator, I have seen students grow in all 5 key elements of teaching reading. I've seen this possible with current curricular resources, PD, coaching, and teacher collaboration and reflection. As a district, we have named that authentic partnerships are essential to achieving our vision for student success. So I'm disheartened that the resolution doesn't seem to speak to building on the strengths, learning, and hard work that students, educators, and communities have already been doing. This has already been stated, but there isn't a one size fits all. So any curricular resources will need to be modified and adapted to work toward our mission of providing for the each and every. We cannot do the either or. The path forward can only be and. Reading instruction can happen without it being at the expense of students' comprehension and criticality development and joy. To support the equity and anti-racist work we have named as a priority as a district. Dr. Goldie Muhammad, because we've been also talking about her throughout tonight, specifically states that we cannot have frameworks designed to advance skills alone and hope that they'll also help children of color. Page 88 in her book, if anybody wants to check that quote. So I just ask that we do not move forward with the resolution in its current state so that we can actually collectively identify next steps that's connected to our district values to make our mission and vision a reality.
Alita?
I think there might be a couple more public commenters.
I didn't see.
I see Tara Sessa.
Who was the first speaker? Was she the first speaker? No?
No.
Okay, so Tara?
Hi, thanks, Alita. I appreciate that. I was like, I raised my hand before some of those people got in there. So I just want to thank the commissioners and all the wonderful educators in SFUSD who are working hard to teach all the students that they work with daily. To the parent who spoke of Eagle Eye, that resonates with me. My son has an amazing first grade teacher, but he's still doing fish the lips, which he learned with his amazing first kindergarten teacher. But it's taken away from his attending to the full word. I am hearing Zaretta Hammond's name a bit today, both during the presentation and during public comment. But I'm wondering if anyone has read her more recent articles. Really talks about the science of the brain and science of learning and the science of reading, because it's not either or, right? No one is saying only phonics or only, beautiful read alouds. They're both very important. Seeing our students seeing their faces, their cultures in the books that we read is very important. And I'm so sorry if anyone got from the resolution, we wanted that to be gone. It's both. Everything is important to the growing readers that we are working with daily in SFUSD. I'm disappointed that the people who helped formulate this resolution weren't able to fully speak. I hope we get to do that in January. So I really do hope it gets pushed to January. We are working closely now with members of CNI to help get all the voices to be heard. And when we helped draft this resolution, we did reach out to members of schools at many different sites. And I'm so sorry if people felt that they were left out, but that is actually one of the key parts of this resolution is that parents, educators, admin from across the board are part of the conversation. And so I really hope that this gets moved to January or moved on to the budget committee for consideration there. But it is important that more voices are heard and that we, sorry, I'm all over the place, but that we just want, phonics is important, and the program we have now isn't very structured or systematic and doesn't connect directly to the texts. So I think we're doing some really great work. We just can do more. So thank you very much, everyone involved. Thank you very much.
Okay. Alita?
Hello. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity to be here today as a panelist, if not as a presenter. Much appreciated. I look forward to clarifying how that works for the next presentation. So today's comments actually, to me, reinforce the need for the working group that's written into this resolution. I've heard a lot, and I appreciate the way that Dr. Priestley framed the beginning of the presentation and the recognition and the need to do better, understanding that there is some great work. And I know I speak on behalf of many of us who have worked on the resolution when I say that the resolution as written is a starting point. We recognize that there are a few things that are left out. I mean, the resolution as it's written, some people have brought up to us, it sounds pretty blamey and shamey. You know, it's not recognizing the great work that's being done at some of the schools, and that's fair. That's very fair. I completely agree with what Tara just said. This isn't an either or. The resolution is not intended to be written as an either or. The resolution as it's written is meant to bring people out of their silos. It's meant to bring everyone together to have these hard conversations in the instructional literacy working group. As Dr. Priestley also mentioned, the outcomes as they are, we can do better, we need to do better. And so the working group is meant to continue the work that we've started, CNI, UESF, parent leaders coming together to talk through this, but in a more structured way. We just at the beginning of the school year spent $8 million on additional F&P kits. And that was a big catalyst for moving this work forward, making sure that before we do any literacy purchases, we do follow the guidelines that were referenced as part of the presentation. I am a parent of Black children in this district. And so to hear the comments about the assumptions about what our Black students experience in this schools, to me, I think that's probably the hardest part of listening to the comments of many of the professionals who have commented here tonight. So I'm going to read a quote from Zaretta Hammond. It's magical thinking to believe that despite not knowing how long vowels work, when students see a brown face in a book, somehow that will be the catalyst and students will begin reading with greater fluency and comprehension. It's not an either or. It never has been, it never can be if we want our kids, if we want my kids, if we want my babies to succeed. It's got to be all. That's why I've been working with not just this administration, but administration going back years to work on literacy. This has been the key priority of the SPEDCAC for at least 5 years. We've had pilots in the past that have gone nowhere. We can't keep going down that path. We all need to collaborate. Many voices are invested. All of us are invested in this. There's no bigger priority. There should not be any bigger priority in this district than making sure every kid in this district learns to read. And right now they're not. So we should all be working together to fix this, not fighting over the details. Thank you.
Megan.
Hi, thank you. My name is Megan Kaluza. I'm currently a behavior analyst in the school district, and I've been a long-time classroom teacher teaching special day classes. And so I've had the honor of teaching Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 literacy instruction in the same class to the same students. Just to give you a perspective. And I just want to point out that we've heard from so many different voices tonight. They were passionate voices, informed voices, and sometimes strongly differing perspectives. And I asked the question, how can we ensure ongoing collaboration between stakeholders and not just one-time meetings? How can we ensure all these voices, along with the many voices in our community, including our families, can continue these conversations to ensure all future professional development and all future curriculum decisions have these voices included? Thinking about that rope visualization we saw in our presentation tonight that builds many skills and brings them together in synthesis, it seems as though the hard work of the many people teaching reading must be recognized and brought together in the very same way. The results of the instructional audit that we heard about that's going on right now should be something that sparks a discussion and conversation that helps shape the way our students learn and ultimately succeed. And the many voices you heard tonight must be part of the conversation. As you've heard, there are many sides to how we can improve instruction for our students. And I don't think there's a one way forward. And I think the important piece of this resolution is that we have to bring people together to look at what's out there, the current science, but also what's happening with our students, our children, those that we serve. Those are two realities that we have to bring together into a conversation between the many people who have a stake in the success of our children. I hope that this discussion doesn't end tonight, not just about the resolution, but about the importance of improving literacy and listening to each other to get there.
So yeah, we shouldn't wait to have this discussion until we have funding to buy curriculum. That's definitely too late. If public education waits for funding to push changes forward, we will never do better for the students like they deserve. Thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Brittany.
Hi, my name is Brittany O'Connor. I am one of the people who helped draft the resolution. I am a school psychologist for the district. I work at James Lick Middle School. And I'm also the chair of the UESF Special Education Committee. So the spirit of this resolution, it's not asking for any specific dollar amount or funding. So I think that needs to be stated. It's the spirit of the resolution is asking for a group of people to get together and communicate, which somebody pointed out, we're working in silos. And I love all of the things that CNI is talking about doing, especially in the conversations that we have had leading up to this meeting with Dr. Priestley and some of the other folks there. I think that they're trying to bring forth these changes in ways that are helpful. And I don't want to let that go unsaid. I'm a school psychologist, so I evaluate students for IEPs. And when I do an evaluation and I find phonological deficits, then a few years later, they don't have those deficits anymore. That's a concern to me, because that shows that they weren't receiving the correct sort of interventions at the tier 1 or the tier 2. They had to be identified as special education in order to receive a tier 3 support with structured literacy. And that's concerning. Why do we have to over-identify students in special education for these resources? I work at James Lick and my students struggle to read. No disrespect to the elementary teachers who are, building their skills up before they come here, but they cannot read. The majority of my students, many are Latinx, Black, African-American, and they are being left behind. My school has tried to create a literacy program this year using the resources that the district has. We still need more. My teachers are looking up their own screeners for the classroom and Googling and asking me what they should use. And they feel at a loss. So even if CNI has all these things, it's not being communicated to the sites. And then another thing that I wanted to bring up is, I know the thing about universal screeners, that should be a tier 1. So to have a universal screener suggested at tier 2 is just confusing. I think that we need to make sure we're training our teachers in the classroom, the gen ed teachers, how to universally screen their teachers or their students with something that is actually effective. And I want to know what studies have shown that FMP is evidence-based. It might be research-based, which is not the same thing. And also, Ed Reports, a nonprofit organization that reviews K-12 materials in English and language, arts, and math, published its evaluation on Fontes and Pinnell Classroom on Tuesday, November of this year, finding that the program didn't meet expectations for text quality or alignment standards and was one of the lowest.
That's time. Okay, Mr. Jeffries.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremiah Jeffries. I've been a first grade teacher for over, 23 years, almost 24 years now. I've gone through all the PDs, balanced literacy. I was there. I worked at Edison when they were doing Success for All, which was the structured phonics program. None of this, no matter where the pendulum goes, there's still an unmovable, unserved group of mostly primarily children of color who don't learn how to read. It's been that way for decades, no matter what the approach is. So I would encourage that the scope of the committee not just include curriculum, because curriculum alone will not do it. It does not address classroom management. It does not address attendance or cultural competency, which are really the main factors that determine whether or not kids learn to read or not. And so in the structures that kids are learning in, meaning teacher by themselves, don't work. Waiting for them to get special ed to get services don't work. And so our over-reliance on special ed that meets kids who have reading needs is highly problematic and expensive and not right. And so the task force that's put together, the work group that's put together, that needs to be an ongoing thing. That's CNI's job in so many ways. But to broaden it out to parents and make it more inclusive, that's fine. But it can't just be around curriculum. It has to be around the total reading experience of learning, which means it has to focus on what are the services that are triggered as a result of assessments. Right now, if my kid gets a and he's in second grade, it doesn't mean anything because it doesn't mean any additional resources for the school. It just means you got to try harder as a teacher by yourself. You don't get a para, like there's no triggering of services based on the kid's reading level or where they are in the scope and where they're supposed to be. So rather they're a D, A, B, G, whatever in F&P, it doesn't matter because it doesn't change any outcomes for them and doesn't mean any additional services. And so that should be the focus. Then also changing the structure. So a lot of programs where people are saying, well, I had great success, those are in super small settings and one-to-one to kids. And we don't have that. So reduce class size, again, a fundamental structure that would actually be doing something different, having a para in the classroom so you can do small groups, so you can do literacy centers and circles well with some level of monitoring, and kids can get all the time that they need, and you got to address attendance. There's no magic, like curriculum's not going to do it alone. So please stop talking about it like it will, and don't let that be the only scope of the committee if we're really trying to address getting kids to read and changing outcomes for young people. That's all. Y'all, everybody's not the enemy of each other, really. Like all this debate, like, but none of it's going to really get to the management, the cultural competency, the actual classroom structure of one adult by themselves at first grade and kindergarten, trying to serve 23 young people and take them from barely learning, knowing no sounds, being a newcomer, having that all mixed together, to kids who are reading all mixed in, to who have like high vocabulary at home, et cetera, leading to showing a year of progress based on what we hope for young people to be able to do. That's all.
I think that's it, unless I missed somebody. Can you please let me know?
Did Kiki get a chance to provide comment? I'm not sure. Okay, they did. Okay, so we will not go backwards. We will move forward. And I think at this point, we will end public comment. And what we will do is we will take a response from staff, and then we will have comments from commissioners. And then we will take action on this item in a way that we feel is appropriate as a committee. So we'll go to staff and then we'll go to commissioners.
Commissioners, that you giving me the opportunity to speak?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry, I didn't say your name, but yes, please, why don't you go ahead?
So thank you, I appreciate that. I just have a few comments. First of all, in my heart of hearts tonight, I really want to give some deep appreciation to some folks who are part of this conversation. Megan, Brittany, Alita, Tara, we've had exactly 2 meetings. I think I want to be public and transparent, and they've been 2 very good meetings. And what's been so good about them is that we've really been able to have some, I believe, transparent, some honest conversation. We've been able to challenge one another. We've been able to ask the hard questions, and we need to continue to do that. And I just want to name that's the most important thing that's happening right now that is going to move us forward. Like we got to name the hard questions. There's a lot of push and pull around this topic. I hear the complexity of it in the callers, and it is complex. If it wasn't, we would have solved this issue already, right? And we all the children would be able to read. We know it's complex. But what I want to name here is that I am committed to partnership. My team is committed to partnership. I believe everybody on this team, on this call today is committed to that. And we need to be committed to the partnership. We got to be committed to moving the hard work forward. And I'm hoping that whatever else happens, that we continue to meet, that we continue to do the hard work. I mean, in this moment, my heart is not even about, like, I know we're here to talk about the resolution, but my heart is, right, kids are front and center. We have kids who need help, and we have work to do around that. Yes, we're in a budget crisis. Yes, we're still in a pandemic. Yes, we're in a teacher shortage. We have like all these things that we can name, but we still have kids in seats today we know we need to service. And we're working towards that, and we need the best thinking from everyone that we can touch. Like, we need everyone's best thinking, and we need that continuous improvement mindset. And I want to be challenged in this work to do better. I want to be challenged to get to the place where we are able to improve our proficiency for kids. I know my team wants that. I know we all want that. And so I just want to name that. I feel like in some ways we've had a lot of maybe some divisiveness on the call. And I don't think that's the spirit of this resolution. And I don't think that's the spirit of this work. I think the spirit of this work is how can we work together so we can serve our children and give them the best that we can. So I just wanted to say that out loud. I want to thank everyone. I know it's not easy, and that just resonates with me tonight. And you know, like tomorrow, I'm hoping we're back at it doing what's right for kids. So thank you.
All right, thank you for that. So now we'll take comments from commissioners, and we'll start with President Lopez, and then we'll go to Commissioner Collins.
Thank you, Dr. Priestley. I was thinking of that phrase and that wording of the spirit of the resolution, which is actually to have the dialogue that we've been wanting to have in this space in partnership with one another since these conversations began, which is well over, I'd say, a year ago. So I appreciate you elevating that. I think there's so much more that has to be said and has to be worked through before we even make a decision. I actually don't think it's appropriate to vote on a recommendation tonight. And I'm wondering, just given where we are and given the parameters we've been given before this conversation began, if we can postpone that. And I'd like to make a motion to do so. But I also want to hear from my colleagues. So I don't know if this switches the ability to do that.
Could we wait to entertain that motion until we've heard from board members first, and come right back to it after folks had a chance to share?
Cool.
Thank you. We will go to Commissioner Collins, then Commissioner Alexander.
I can go after, since I've already spoken, and I'd be interested in hearing from Commissioner Alexander.
Please, Commissioner Alexander.
I'll try to keep my comments brief, since it sounds like we may be carrying this conversation over, but I do want to say a few things just so that folks know where I'm at. I think, first of all, I want to thank and apologize to Alita in particular, and Brittany and Megan, who for the confusion. I think that was not necessary or appropriate. I think you should have been able to present. And I also want to thank everyone else who showed up to make comments on both sides of, let's say, you know, for and against this approach. I think this set of public comment was incredibly thoughtful, I thought, and very, and it's clear that everyone involved, as Dr. Priestley said, really wants what's best for kids. And so I just want to say, like, as a board member, listening to it all was really helpful and informative. I totally support this idea of a working group and the kind of collaboration. It sounds like actually maybe like there's some seeds of a working group being planted already in these other meetings that could be, maybe that could be expanded into a formal working group. So I love that idea. I do, and I've told this to several of the folks who have been involved in this resolution directly, but I don't think I said it to my colleagues because of Brown Act considerations. So I just wanted to say this. I do have concerns about the way the resolution is framed. Because to me, it does seem like it's well, one of the public commenters said that, something about let's not go back to the reading wars. I think it was Karen said that, and I was joking with someone. I was having this PTSD from the '90s, remembering the whole language phonics debate, and so I guess, and I know a little bit of the national. There's like a national political context around this phrase, the science of reading, and there's commercial interests on both sides of this debate, right? So F&P is, there's big money there, but there's big money supporting these Wilson and foundations and these other things. So I just think, like, here in San Francisco, it would be great if we could do what it sounds like you all are already doing and start coming together. And let's include, by the way, the lit coaches. I heard from a lot of lit coaches tonight who have very strong feelings about this, who are reading experts who aren't at the table. I think they need to be at that table too, along with, so everybody's kind of in dialogue. And I would love it if we could kind of get away from the political either or conversation, and really try to unpack what it takes to have kids learn to read. And in my understanding, it actually, a lot of it is about an expert teacher, right? And because a lot of what I'm hearing from both groups here is that there's things that we're saying we're doing, but they might not be happening in every classroom. And so I think there's, again, back to this question of, like, how do we get to consistent implementation of whatever we're doing, right? So we could adopt a whole new program and a new curriculum, and we may be in the same place in 5 or 6 years because teachers aren't doing that curriculum either, right? So I think there's that systemic question. And then I also just really want to lift up the last comment from Jeremiah Jeffries, who I think if we were engaged in some either or thinking, he took us outside the box, right? And said, and don't forget that actually this curriculum piece that we're having all this discussion about is actually really just this one little piece of the child's experience. I think that is really, really an important thing to remember. In all of my years as an educator and all my experience with teachers, that's often what makes or breaks. Like, a teacher can have the best understanding of a theory of how to teach phonics in first grade, but if their class is chaotic, or other factors are creating, or they don't have cultural competency, it's not going to happen. So I just hope I really hope that we can continue this process. So I think that's I wouldn't want to support the resolution as it is, but I definitely support the intention that's been expressed, and I support the idea of a working group, working with our staff and with our educators to figure this stuff out. So, and I'm happy to collaborate if it's helpful, but it sounds like you all have got it handled, but if there's anything I can do to be useful in that process, please let me know.
Thank you. Can I chime in? Okay, so I guess I just want to say, I very much appreciate the public comment. I appreciate staff in varying aspects. I also want to name the fact that I feel like this whole process has been a little bit frustrating. I guess part of the reason is because there's nowhere that I'm aware of in a resolution that I wrote, and maybe, President Lopez can chime in, that we've mandated any curriculum adoption. So if anybody can find anywhere in the resolution where it says we must adopt a certain curriculum by a specific publisher, I don't think that's a good way to write a resolution. And it's not the focus of the resolution. There is no where in the resolution that it says we must adopt one and only teaching methodology. I think what has become clear, what was clear before the resolution and what has become even more clear after this conversation is that people have very strongly held beliefs about how to teach reading. And I'll tell you that I'm not one of those people, because I'm not a reading teacher. I consider myself a high school teacher, and I deeply respect people who do the work. And I believe that the folks that are closest to an issue need to be the ones who inform how we approach it. And so the core element of the resolution is actually getting a working group together, because what has been really clear in this conversation is that there's a lot of people that have very strongly held perspectives about what we are doing and what we aren't doing, and very strongly held perspectives about what we should be doing, that are not in alignment at all. And we're not going to be successful if we can't get both sides of the house together. I mean, even if this isn't even a parent and teacher debate, this is a teacher to teacher debate, or a Lit Coast versus RSP debate. Like, and that to me is really concerning. And that explains to me why maybe we're not effective. Because even if we adopted one strategy, if we said, okay, we're just going to say F&P is the way, and I don't think it is, but let's just say we did that, or we're going to just only do structured literacy, right? Even if we did that, if we all did it with fidelity, we would probably get better results than what we're getting right now. What I am understanding in all these conversations is that we actually don't know what we're doing. I don't know if anybody can tell me what specifically is happening with fidelity across the district. I know there's a lot of amazing teachers doing amazing things, and there's students that are seeing reading gains, and I also know that there's students that are not getting assessed properly and they're falling through the cracks. And so, and I don't know what to do with that. And so I think the only thing that we can do from a central perspective, from a policy perspective, is all get on the same page. I mean, number one, that's where we have to start. And so the working group, the whole purpose of a working group is for the folks that are really crucial to the work. That includes RSP teachers and literacy coaches, and also parents and kindergarten teachers, folks that are like right at the core of the work, need to be able to come together and agree what the work is. And I don't even think that that has happened. I mean, we're all wondering, what is the work in this meeting here? And you know, to hear people say, well, this stuff is happening, if people don't know it's happening, that's a problem, right? And so how do we make sure that we have a coherent program that everybody's on board with, or at least a lot of people are on board with, and we have kind of a plan? And that is the purpose of the working group, is to actually come to agreement on what the work is, whether it's shifting how we assess students, whether it's adopting a different pedagogy, or whether it's buying new curriculum materials. None of that is prescribed by the resolution, but the one thing that I think is necessary, and I think everybody is calling for, is that the folks that are critical to the work need to be on the same page, and they haven't been. And what I'm also seeing is that that needs to be a regular, structured activity. It can't be just when people bring stuff up and then we have a meeting. And it can't be just like, so I'm concerned if we don't, I'm open to anything. I'm open to anything, right? And I think that this resolution has been a great opportunity for us to kind of crystallize this conversation and really, you know, put it on the table. But if we move forward and we don't commit to some type of structured working group where we have different community members able to participate in this dialogue, I don't see how we're going to be successful in any approach that we use. Because parents do need to be involved. They shouldn't be informing, like, you know, the nuts and bolts maybe of how it plays out in schools. That should be the teachers and the paraprofessionals and the RSP teachers, and central office also needs to be involved. But if, and I also want to say that one of the questions that was laid out is who's on that task force. President Lopez and I said, you know, who I think should decide that is the folks leading those teams. That would be Dr. Priestley, that would be Jean Robertson, and that would be Susie DeBlois. The folks who are actually leading the team centrally should be the ones deciding, you know, who should inform that working group. But I strongly believe that we need to get a working group together, and then that working group itself, just like the other, you know, QT PAC, they should define how often they meet, what the scope of their work is, and what challenges they want to take on together. But if we can't get them together because we're caught up in you know, I guess being upset that the question is being asked, then I think we're never gonna as a district, as a full district, really be successful. And thank you for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you so much for your comments to all the commissioners. Commissioner Alexander, did you want to add more?
Oh, sorry, I was trying to lower my hand. I was getting confused. But I will just say, maybe in response to what Commissioner Collins said, I think I would totally support a working group. I think my challenge would be with how it's framed, at least as the resolution was originally written, was it directs the working group to go down particular paths that are very specific and seem to be sort of biased in one direction. I think if we could frame a working group that really was more open. And I don't mean framing it in another direction. I mean just framing it in a more open way. I would support that. And I'd be happy to help work on that if that was useful.
Thank you again, commissioners, for your comments. I think for me, I want to thank everyone for coming out and kind of making this kind of a place of conversation and discussion on this situation. And I think like people's passion and commitment kind of shine through in the comments. And even though I think it burned hot in some ways, I feel like it's good for like where we need to go. And I think it's all coming from a place of love for our students and kind of the commitment we need to have. I would just say for me, I'm very upset by our outcomes when it comes to literacy. I'm very upset about the amount of dollars we spend to support students and families and the amount of consistency that students and their families experience across the district when accessing literacy supports. At the same time, getting ready to support a balancing plan that eliminates a lot of tier 2 literacy supports for tier 2 schools, right? And understand like that's what we're asked in some ways by the state to do at this moment. And understanding that as the spring comes around, we might have an opportunity to really reinvest and really kind of rethink about the way that we've been going about these things and really provide our sites and our families what they need to be supportive. I think the big takeaways for me is how do we make sure that we're including student and family voice in this and really making sure that they're centered and really leveraging our advisory councils, both parent, guardian, and students to really be engaged in this conversation in more of a robust way, not only to curriculum instruction, but I think to the whole package of how we look at literacy and address it in our district. And how do we create more transparency, both in our outcomes and in our process and decision making? I feel like today was like a really good step forward in that and really provided a lot more ground for us to have more nuanced conversations together. And I think it's really about how do we as a district develop new ways to collect input from the people who are delivering the services, and really letting that be a part of our process of development and creation and evaluation. And how are we responsive to the needs at school sites? I think for a lot of the things that we talked about here are vital and important, but I also know for a lot of school sites right now, the ability to have 1 or 2 additional staff people to just assist with students on a daily basis would probably be the biggest thing we could do as a district to help them. And so really, I think trying to figure out what is it we need to do kind of structurally different is we're at a point now where we're being asked to look at the way we structure our district differently. And with this being kind of a vital priority, and I would just say, I think for me, like I would love to see a reality where we have all of our students, have literacy in 2 languages. You know what I mean? And like that is the place that we're at as people are leaving elementary school. And I do think that as we kind of continue this conversation, we kind of talk about the working group, whether it's specific to some of the things that are already happening or kind of to the larger conversation, I do think it'd be important to involve City College in that conversation and maybe some of the other colleges in the city, as well as the early education providers, both internally and kind of outside of the district, and really figure out how we as a city are approaching literacy and kind of are being supportive of kind of the entire pipeline that people will experience here, and really make sure that it's funded from top to bottom, and just kind of the impact that we would have if people were already coming into our district with strong reading skills, versus that's something that we're kind of providing for the folks who aren't kind of starting through our early education programs. So I think those are things that I wanted to lift up, and I think at this time maybe to kind of build off of President Lopez's motion to continue the item to our next meeting in January, and to at that time have a presentation from the authors, and maybe with their designees, and we will make sure that we agendize that appropriately to have folks there. President Lopez, did you want to maybe say what I'm trying to say in a better way?
No, I think you conveyed that, but I did want to elevate that, today we didn't have the opportunity to hear from many of the co-authors who did want to embody what other people were mentioning was missing in the language of the resolution. So is why I'm pushing to extend this opportunity and hopefully bring back amendments that incorporate language that's more inclusive to other folks who feel they weren't represented in this work, and also give them the opportunity to rightfully share their presentation.
Okay. Is that something that legal counsel feels comfortable giving us direction on in this moment, or is that something that we should confer offline about?
The legal can tell you what we can do so that because I've done this before, I just don't know.
Yes, you can vote. You can have a motion and second it to postpone it to the next meeting, or to forward it with no recommendation for the author and president to send it to the committee that's appropriate.
I would like to, if somebody would make a motion to.
I made a motion earlier.
Yeah, she made the previous motion that was mentioned, right?
I think what I'm trying to get clarity on is, do we need to indicate anything about presenters at this point in time, or is that something that, okay.
You don't need to indicate that now.
Okay, so then Commissioner Alexander?
So the motion is to just bring it back to the next curriculum meeting?
Yeah, it would be to postpone and to bring it back to the next curriculum committee meeting, and the authors will have the time to make amendments and things of that sort in the in-between.
Awesome.
I think I need a second though.
You do.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, and is that something that would be helpful for us to vote on as a roll call vote, or we seem to have consensus? Since we
You can all indicate consensus verbally, or you can do a roll call.
Okay, I think we'll do verbal consensus if we have that from everybody, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think with that, we will end our meeting with no other items. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner Bogus.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.